Okay. All right. Let me know if y'all can hear me now. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Yes. Can you hear? Okay. All right. My bad for that. I was saying, peace and shalom, family. It's your brother Divine Prospect. We're going live now on our Kingdom Harbinger Ministries YouTube channel. Kingdom Harbinger Ministries, KHM is the ministry. This is our channel. And we're going live. I was saying that I'm a little under the weather. Was worse about a day or two ago. I'm recovering. I was going to push this session off tomorrow to give me an extra day to recover, but I think I'm good to push through for tonight. We'll see how everything goes. So let's see how tonight's session is. Bear with me though. Let me see who's coming on in here. As you're coming on in here, hit the thumbs up. As you're enjoying the broadcast, hit the thumbs up. Make sure you share this on all your social media platforms, so that with the thumbs up and the shares, YouTube can take this content and move it to the top of the YouTube charts for more visibility, so we can draw more people, gravitate more people to the truth of this information, and hopefully look for transformed lives afterwards. You know what I'm saying? So, all right. Okay, a couple updates. First and foremost, I want to say, give a big thank you and shout out to all of you who participated in our back to school giveaway. We had a Q&A session, and several of y'all participated, and I appreciate that. We had responded to the emails and sent y'all the tracking number for you to track your computers, those of you who wanted their computers. Those who had won the school supplies, we've reached out and we've made contact with you as well. So just check your emails for updates on that. Also, when you receive these products, please shoot us an email to confirm receipt. And if you're comfortable enough, can you please send us some pictures of you and your children enjoying these supplies, so we can inspire more people to engage in our giveaways and check out our live streams, so they also can win something. So not only do you get this edifying information, you also get something tangible in return, which I think is awesome. So we're going to try to restore our giveaways again, like we were doing in the past. I mean, 2020, we did a whole bunch of giveaways. In 2021, we did some as well. Then we did one or two earlier this year, but we're going to bring them back again. So we're going to have so many giveaways. You know that so-called holiday called Christmas that's coming around in a couple of months. Yeah, our community is going to forget all about it, because you're going to get so much stuff from here. It's like, what's that? You know what I'm saying? So it's all good. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started into the show. So I want to shout out to all of our KHM members. Thank you guys for continuously committing to the ministry, helping us do all the things that we're doing in the community. You guys make it possible with your support, for committing to the ministry, being partakers of the ministry. Be on the lookout for a meeting for KHM members coming soon. Shout out to Mother Leslie in the building. Her and Asantawa is leading the charge for our KHM member administration team. So you'll definitely get some correspondence from them soon. Shout out to all my Patreon patrons. Thank you so much for your support. Hopefully you guys are enjoying all that illustrious content that we have on the Patreon page. I have several more things I want to add over the weekend for you guys. So make sure you're signed up. If you're not signed up, it's www.patreon.com/DivineProspect. Okay. Also, as you guys already know, YouTube has demonetized this channel. Therefore, you cannot give any super chats or any super stickers. So if you would like to support the ministry, you can see scrolling across the screen various ways in which you can do so. We have Cash App, PayPal, etc. Also, you can look in the description, in the link in the description below. There's several items in there to show you how you can support the ministry. Also, if you want to contact us, stay in touch with us, you can email us at kingdomharbinger@gmail.com. Let us know what we can do to serve you. If there's anything that we can do to support. Also, we are, again, working hard on our KHM virtual homeschool. We're getting more and more requests for it. We are in touch with the academy that we're partnering with, and we're just waiting for a couple of other minute things to get worked out. Hopefully we get it done in the next week or so that we can start before the end of August, so we can bring everybody in before it's too late. If all else fails, which we're working hard for it not to, we may have to push it back one more semester, because there's a lot involved in trying to get this done, technical stuff, legal stuff, all that type of stuff. So this is not a fly-by-night operation, right? This is not, something that is not worth its weight, or has any merit to it. It requires a lot of work, a lot of research, a lot of stuff on our part to get this up and running. And we want to thank all the members of KHM for contributing their dues to go towards funding this, and everybody else outside of membership who has given to this cause. We appreciate that. All right. So to everybody who has emailed us, you will receive email correspondence, give you an update on what's going on. So just stay tuned to your emails for that. All right. Also, our KHM Keshed magazine, the one that you saw the YouTube shorts for, that will be here very soon. We're tidying up the rest of the loose ends. I have an article I have to finish for the magazine, and that's one of the final things that we're doing to touch that up. So that should be available probably before the KHM virtual homeschooling, but we'll see. But those are the two next things that we're launching as a ministry. After those things are out the way, we got 3 or 4 more things that we're going to launch after that. But this stuff just takes a long time to get done, especially if you're trying to do it right the first time. You know what I'm saying? So, but it's all good. But yeah, Mother Leslie, she's in the chat. She's giving you details in regards to the members meeting and everything like that. So, again, stay on the lookout for that. Let me see. Hold on. Let me check something real quick. Okay. All right. Also, Seth, today I had sent out your book, so you should be getting that soon. And everything else that we talked about via email is coming soon to you as well. Just didn't have a lot of spare time to get around to fulfilling some things, but I'm taking care of that, my brother. So I just wanted to let you know. All right. Finding Neshama, you can email us at khmvirtualhomeschool@gmail.com. I'll put the email address in the chat. All right. So anybody with any questions, concerns, interests, or whatever, or if you want to help, we're looking for people to join our administration staff. If you have teaching experience or experience within an academy, university, public school, grade school, whatever, feel free to reach out to us as well. We're looking for any experts in that field, consultants, or whatever the case may be. So if this is your field as well, or you have a huge interest in it, email us as well, So that's the email right there, khmvirtualhomeschool@gmail.com. All right. Also, for all KHM members, you guys should already have this, but I'm going to share with you anyway. Hold on. Let me get this. All KHM members should have the app. Everybody else who also is not an official member but wants to get involved with KHM, also download the app. You'll see it, the details scrolling across the screen at the bottom. So make sure you guys have that as well. Email here. All right. That email right there is for our KHM members. Also, anybody that's interested in joining KHM, go back and check out the video on this channel. Actually, I'm going to grab it for y'all real quick. You can take a look at to see what KHM is about. You can also check out all of our chapter launch events on this channel. We have about 8 or 9 of them on this channel. And then I did a special session here giving you all the details about what we're doing in regards to KHM. Benny Wheat, I'm glad you're enjoying that, my brother. I'm glad you're enjoying that. Cool. Appreciate that. All right. Okay, so let me go ahead and give a couple of shout outs. Let's see. All right, let's take it from the top. Shout out to Sister Santamar, Shalom. Sister Sharuka Yisrael, Shalom. Shout out to Emmanuel E. Jeremiah, Shalom. Bergen Paris, Shalom. Sharon Harrens, Myron Henderson, Raphael, Shalom. Jaslyn Berry, Shalom. Yapa, Kalaya Kimberly M. Shalom. Raphael. Shalom. Mother Field. Shalom. Thomas Jackson. Shalom. Let's see. Who else do we have up in here? Kidron. Shalom. Beautifully created by Yah. Shalom. Lifted. Shalom. Kevin Powell. Shalom. Lisa Anderson. Shalom. Tony Yaya Sharala. Shalom. Sister V Love. Shalom. Ehuv. Shalom. Mick for real. Shalom. Or Mike for real. Shalom. Sister Naomi Z. Shalom. Sister Naomi, this is Flames. Thank you for sending this book over to me. I appreciate that. This is definitely going to the community library. So once I absorb the knowledge and information from this, I will be sharing that on this channel. I read about 3 essays already. So far, it's pretty good. So I appreciate that. And hey, if anybody else wants to send books this way, the P.O. box is in the description below. You know what I'm saying? You can take that, put that in Amazon, ship it to us. Or if you already have the book and you want to get it to us, definitely ship it to us. I want to keep a physical community library as well as the digital one that we share on Patreon. So I definitely appreciate that gift, sis. So far, I'm really enjoying the content on it. It's very similar to the stuff that I share already on the Patreon. So thank you for that. Appreciate that. Shout out to Get Wise. Shalom. Gurney Mosley. Shalom. Scott Garrett Headley. Shalom. King Water Blue. Shalom. Shine Carpenter. Shalom. J-Rod. Shalom. Sister Avia V. Shalom. Sister Avia, we got your email. You should be hearing back from Gail soon. So hang in there. Sister Russia Graham, shalom, sis. Let us know when you're ready for the follow-up call, whenever you have availability, so we can follow up with you, sis, in regards to the onboarding for KHM and everything else, all your other inquiries. But we appreciate your support and for joining the team. Shout out to Sister Dita Star, Love Jah, shalom. Ariel, shalom. Truth Seeker, shalom. Gavin Miller, shalom. Jocelyn Harris, shalom. Solomon Ben David, shalom. What's going on, my brother Seth? Shalom, shalom. John and Dorsey in the building, shalom. JIB, shalom. Let's see. Isaiah Israel, shalom. Sadaria Halliburton, shalom. Feed the Spirit, shalom. Zeph, shalom. Jean, shalom. My brother Stephen Mikhail Key, shalom. How you doing, my brother? Hopefully all is well. Make sure you guys, as you're coming on, type in shalom, man. Type in shalom or something along those lines. I can give you a shout out. We can see who's here in the building. Isaiah Israel says, when is the New Jersey chapter up and running? I know, right? New Jersey chapter. Hopefully that should be up soon. It's going to take some time for us to get to Jersey. We do have a few people in Jersey, so that's the positive thing. One main connect in Jersey that I've been communicating with. I have to follow up with him soon. But we'll keep you updated on that. All right. Shout out to Tyra Batya. Shalom. Stat 2296. Shalom. My brother Tyrell John. Shalom. So what he's talking about is in the link below. You can click that link if you want a one-on-one consultation session with me. Click on that link. Let's go ahead and have a great dialogue, great conversation, edify each other, build each other along this journey, equip each other for these battles that's to come, and pour into each other. Right. So just click the link in the description below. If you want to schedule an appointment to have a chat. All right. Shout out to my brother Sean McGee in the building. Shalom. What's going on? Let's see. Awa Ya Allah Ban Yasharala. He says, do you have anything in Mexico? No, I have nothing in Mexico yet. Will we be in Mexico? It depends how many people we have out in Mexico. So my brother, if you know several people out in Mexico that are interested in KHM, or you can gather 10 or more people, then we down to set up a chapter out there. Let us know what city in Mexico. Mexico's a huge country, right? Let us know what city in Mexico, and we can go from there. All right. But thank you for that that shout out, so we know that we have brothers and sisters in Mexico watching this channel. Shout out to Dope Sale in the building. Shalom. Linda Rick. Shalom. Brandon Blackwell. Shalom. What's going on? It's good. Good to hear that, my brother. Good to hear that, my brother. Ariel. Shalom. Let me see. Feed the Spirit. Shalom. I think I covered everybody. All right. Cool. All right. So let me see. I think I covered everything. I don't see none of our trolls here tonight, so that might be a good thing. But you know, we have no problem doing the smoke breaks and giving you our Surgeon General's warning. Right? Let's see. Make sure this is still going. All right. All right. Let's see. Okay. Let me bring up these. This stuff. All right. Let me zoom in here. There we go. All right. Shout out to Apothecary Custom. Shalom. All right, family, as you're coming on in, hit the thumbs up button. Hit the thumbs up button as you're coming on in. Make sure you're sharing this video on all social media platforms. Let's get this content to the top of the YouTube charts. Bring more people into this truth. Expose them to this knowledge. And let's get busy. It was actually a Clubhouse session I was going on when we had a bunch of Dr. Yorkites or Nuwabians. No disrespect to them, but trying to bang on the Bible and Israelites. And we with the smoke. I go in there all the time and I correct their pseudoisms. And invited some of them onto this show. But as you can see, they don't show up. So Gavin, what should be I like that. I like that, Gavin. I like that. Yo, Seth, drop your email in the chat. And Gavin, send that over to Seth's email. Seth is going to help us get a t-shirt out of it. So I appreciate that. Let's see. Let me see if there's something still going on in this room. Let me see. Hold on. And if you're not on Clubhouse, I don't know what you're waiting for. All right. You need to go download it from Google Play or the Apple App Store. Download it. It's called Clubhouse. Download it. Set up an account. Look for me at DivineProspect. Add me. And let's build on there, man. There's a lot of interesting conversations happening on there. I'll be trying to isolate these people that be saying stuff and get them on this channel, but yeah, nobody be showing up. So I mean, it's not like we're not used to that, right? Let me see if I can find. I don't see this room. They must have closed the room. Yeah, so I guess I can't share none of this with you because it looks like they closed the room. Oh well. Yeah, I want to give y'all some insight to some of the foolery they be saying up in there. Oh no, the room is still here. Is the room?
Chapter 18, verse 23 and 24, right? And type in Bible verse, Greek text. And as you go through, you will see that right there, the word for sorcery is what? It's pharmakion. Then you go to the word pharmakion and you see pharmakion is pharmaceuticals and medication. Why am I saying that? Because for those who were not around in 1970s and 1980s, 1990s, we had a book named Leviathan 666 written by Dr. Marietta GA. The first man who wrote a book of that sort for Black people. So some of you all missed it. You all missed what he talked about in Leviathan 666 and the things he exposed that nowadays people are saying, oh, 666 is 6 carbon, 6 protons, 6 neutrons, 6 electrons, and this stuff ain't going to happen, and spooking you all out. In the meantime, people are taking this thing in the Bible, in Revelation, called pharmakion. So now, let's flip to the present day. We have a misfah, a book, and it's called The Neuroscience of Wunuwa or Wusabat. And when you open that book, Dr. Malachi Yorks shows you straight and plain in there that there's a group of beings called the Hospitalists. And the Hospitalists was a military group, right? That went out and fought war and came back and got patched up. But he tells you in the same book the effects of Vicodin and what Vicodin does to your liver, your lungs, your kidneys, your brain, etc., etc. Now, let's flip back to the past. Dr. Malachi Z. York had already stated what certain things, such as chocolate and even coffee or caffeine, does to your brain and your system, whether lymphatic or whatever system it is, the effects of caffeine on your system. Let's flip back some more. Dr. Malachi Z. York wrote a book called The Science of Healing. Let's keep going. Dr. Malachi Z. York wrote a book called Radifa, The Science of Sound Healing, and how to go outside and clap your hands before your face about 3 times, make sure your ears ring, and how to breathe. He wrote a book named The Breath Book. The point I'm making is, in retrospect, this being has written so much information since 1961, and then from that point on, from when he was 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, he's been writing and teaching and then brought people together. Back in the 1970s, as a young man in Barbados, I saw someone with a newspaper that says, "Our Savior has arrived." There was a man dressed in all white, with white boots on, and something white wrapped around his head, and something white hanging from his shoulders, and he had a very huge and big book in his hand, standing there with a black spot on his forehead. Years later, it was a book named The Book of Lamb, a book that Elijah Muhammad said was going to come in the future. Another story. But the point I'm making is that an example was set, right, for all those who do not accept and see, right, the intrinsic value of this being in our presence. An example was set. So, if you're not going to step into Wu Sabat, you have to find something to step into that's going to be relevant to the survival of you, your children, and as a brother said, your DNA and your family line. Realizing that everyone in your family is not going to join you. And it comes about in the story of Noah, when the flood was going to happen, and Noah said, "Listen, y'all better come over here. A flood going to happen. Y'all going to drown." And they said, "Nah, Noah, you bugging. You smoking too much marijuana. You drinking too much liquor. You was in the tent drunk the other day, and we saw you naked. I mean, and we keep seeing you naked, and you keep walking around naked. If you was naked before naked, you know to be a naked man, Noah, you bugging. We're not going to listen to you." Right? In the Quran now, it talks about the Dajjal, and when this being is seen rising in the east or whatever, right? You have Noah, the book of Revelation, and the Quran. At some point in time, somebody has to accept the fact that they believe in a flood story, right? In a fire coming down from heaven story, or a Dajjal story, which is Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, and even a Jah Rastafari story that speaks of when Jah returns, and when they scared me as a young man in the Caribbean, said that when Jah came back, the jewelry I was wearing on my wrist was going to melt off, and my skin was going to burn up. I'm like, oh, wow, that sounds scary, but it really didn't, because my sense of imagination, I tried to see that, and my skin burning in the sun as a Mennonite, it didn't work. So the point I'm making is that for those people who don't want to attach themselves to Wu Nuwa, just stick around.
Yeah, I've been around Nuwa for some time, bro.
Doom, but stick around.
I've been around for Nuwa for some time.
The world, the way it's going right now, right? We have been foretold of this stuff from way back in the 70s and 80s and 90s. The great balls of fire cast from the planet Earth. The World 2000 was to exist. The VSI 666.
I'm about to leave this because they're not allowing hand raising, which means allowing you an opportunity to join the stage.
All this stuff has been put out. You can go online on YouTube and type in Dr. Malachi Z. York, a being that already had spoken of what was going to happen with the World Trade Center in books that he wrote. Now let's flip to the present. In around the year 2010,
I'll give you a little bit more of this, and I'm cutting it
there's
off.
There's a book named The God of Light and Fire. For those who don't know, and when that book came out, at the beginning, it showed you, right, the shape and the figure of a disease or a state of disease by the name of corona. And he said right there, there's a new virus or disease coming, and its name is Corona. Can I get a tuwa?
No, you don't get no tuwa.
Manen pa
tuwa. Ain't no tuwa. Nah, right? None of that.
Right? Ador en kom faul, Jaweth.
No.
Jaweth pa fifth.
Nah.
Pa fifth.
Get that Nuwapu right, bro.
If you all remember, as core.
He's speaking Nuwapu, by the way.
Panet. Remember this is our language. In the book named The God of Light and Fire, in the beginning, Dr. Malachi Z. spoke of the coronavirus before it even came out, because he wrote this 10 years ago. So don't say you haven't been warned. Say, I did not listen. Because a warner has been sent. Amongst the Muslims, it says that a people is never left without a huda, a guide, or a warner. Whatever the word for warner is in Arabic, I don't remember right now. But this being has been putting out this information from way
information,
back
which is not even a real word.
Let me break down Leviathan 60-year-old. It began back in the 1700s or 1600s in Europe when a man, a Protestant pastor, I forgot his name, wrote a book about a system named Leviathan. Right, and when he put the book out, and he said Leviathan was a great creature or serpent that came from the waters, how Leviathan was going to take the planet over. That his name, I think his name was Edward Pope or John Pope or something like that, right? But go back and do research on this thing called Leviathan. Dr. Malachi Z. as Al-Imam Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi has spoken of this system way back in the 70s. When I read my first book at the age of 13, he broke down the New World Order and what to expect. He broke down the Pharisee Easter, the Pharisee Christmas. He broke down all that stuff. Did the pig come? Did the hog come for mankind? What is the pig? The dog book. Listen, I'm letting you all know. He spoke of people walking on all fours. For all of us who can remember who was there, he spoke of people walking on all fours in the dog book from way back in the 70s. It's nothing new to us who was here. We've already seen it. Now in the 1990s, they're talking of a disease in Turkey amongst a family, right, called the family who walks on all fours. If you don't believe me, you can go and check it out. It's on YouTube. It's a documentary named The Family Who Walk on All Fours. And something they had in the DNA that when this man named Ulmer Tan came across them up in Laodicea in Turkey, where there are caves. Imagine that. You have a family walking on all fours in Laodicea. No, in Cappadocia, in Turkey, the same place where Abraham came from. There's families walking on all fours. They don't speak intelligibly, right? And they have a funny way of carrying themselves, and they actually walk around on all fours. Dr. Malachi Z. in the 1970s broke down about these caves and spoke of how these beings live in these caves. And what it says in the Quran is a chapter called Surah Al-Qaf, the chapter of the cave. We have been told this stuff for all these years. The Muslims could not explain anything because they don't know the Arabic. The Jews and the Hebrews, they hide the stuff. The Christians, they lost in the source. The Rastafari, okay, we give them, because I was in a class with Dr. York said, at least he respects the Rastafari because their God is a man that lived, right? That we actually seen who lived in this century and this part of time. So boom, you got a God, good. So Elijah Muhammad was a God, good, boom. Robert Joel was a God, good, boom. We accept them as our deities. What we don't look at is, as the brothers say, the unification aspect. Once you can lose your ego, once you can subdue your ego, right?
They brought me to the stage.
Once you can subdue and lose that ego, and do not let that ego be the motivating aspect, right? Because when Dr. Malachi Z. built Tamaray, I was at a class. He said we did not just build this for us Sabians, no, Nuwabians alone. He said this land is for everybody. We can have Hebrews up here. We can have,
but it's not here no more. It's gone.
We can have anybody up here as long as we come together and work together. Now, mind you, let's look at a society. A Russian and a Polish, an Englishman, an American, and whoever may have a discrepancy in their belief system. But guess what they do? They come together and work together for the benefit and the perpetual upkeep of their species. What do we as a people do? Oh man, he into Egypt. I ain't with that. I ain't dealing with him. He into Islam. He a Christian. No, I ain't into that, right? And we get caught up in our stupid egos based upon religious dogma that created the ego. But what we fail to do is look at the fact that we are really all one people. You are a people of a genetic disposition tied into Parveye, or the sun. So
that's this doctrine called the people of the sun.
Every scripture, especially Psalms 84 verse 11, that says the Lord God is a sun. And people who are under the spell of spelling would see that word and say, oh man, no, it don't say sun, it says something else. So, as the brother said, everybody ain't gonna come this way, and everybody sure as heaven ain't gonna make it. Because some of us as a people, right, we have been genetically destroyed. And when I say destroyed, I don't mean like the genes.
I'm gonna see if they give us an opportunity to speak. Otherwise, I'm just gonna close this out.
And you don't have the key to unlock your genes.
Unlock your genes.
So therefore, your genetics are in a state of slumber and sleep.
Is yours? I want to know if he unlocked his genes.
Because it's a spell of nawam, a spell of sleep, because your DNA has become dormant.
The DNA has become dormant.
Knock on that door. Your ass ain't waking up.
Okay, can we talk now?
So what are we going to do about you? We have to move on, hoping that somebody will have an intelligent gene in their DNA that will be opened, or some bodies. It's like the brother says about your gene and your genetics. We are not here to take anything over. We're here to change your mind. But the one thing that we have always done as Ansar Allah, as New Islamic Hebrew, as Black Cowboys, as Sumerians, as the Wahabians,
Sumerians, right? And Black Cowboys.
Sabians, we have always did our best to prepare something for our people. If you don't want to come over here, then guess what? It's inside the books. Prepare yourself. Because as you look around you, you're realizing there's more death, there's more destruction, there's more chaos, there's more calamity, there's more disease, there's more negativity, because we are going through a period named death. That's the period we are in, a death cycle, because the moon cycle is dying. So in order for death to actually happen, right, it has to take beings with us, both physical,
hold on, family, give me
mental,
a second. I'm trying to find something.
Beings have to die. And in order for something to live, as Dr. York taught us, something has to die. So if you gotta die, because you got enough gonads to face up to the beast and what's happening, and then you got enough gonads to face up to this extraterrestrial agenda on the planet.
Facts.
That goes all the way back into what was going on for years as the planet Earth was being terraformed by ETs. And you're going to say,
terraformed by ETs, the Earth.
But right now, there's so much ET extraterrestrial talk going on, it don't even make no sense. But when we were Ansar Allah and Malachi Ziyah, as Al-Imam Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi was speaking on UFOs and extraterrestrials back then, the Arab world called us crazy. They called us what's that word again? We were possessed by jinns. We were maradin. We were marid. We was demons, right? And then you had Christians saying, "Oh, we don't believe in that stuff. You're just crazy." Jews and Hebrews, we don't believe in that stuff. You're just crazy. But now on the planet Earth, since the year 1970, and he was teaching, everywhere you look, and some people's minds are so.
All right, I'm gonna keep that down low until he finishes his soliloquy, and then maybe they'll open up the stage to let other people speak. I'm on the stage now. He's a mod, so I don't want to interrupt. So we're gonna wait for him to finish his little soliloquy, and when he's done, they can open it up. We'll jump in. In the interim, let's continue to build what we're doing. Shout out to Sister Melissa Miller. Melissa Miller. We put the email in the. Let me put it there again. Yeah, we put the email in the chat. I put it there again. If you have any questions in regards to that, email us at khmvirtualhomeschool@gmail.com. All right. All right. So shout out to Yahoo, Dawid Ben Yochanan, Shalom, Daniel N, Shalom, Gaal, the Galilean, Shalom, true people of the Bible, Shalom. Let me see what else is in there. Shout out to Brother Dennis McMillan, Ernest Higgs, Shalom, Lataris Harrison, Shalom, November Autumn, Shalom. Let's see. D. Prather, Truth Revealed. What's going on, brother? Glad to see you back here with us. We had a good build last time, so that was good. Melen Theos Zimuri. I think that's everybody. As you're coming on in, hit shalom so I can see you, give you a shout out. Shout out to my brother Aaron in the building. Shalom. Long time no see. King Bay Boy. Shalom. Nazarene of the Way. Shalom, King. What's going on? Malak Y. Shalom. Again, as you're coming on in, I just want to let you know I'm a little bit under the weather. So forgive me. It took a lot to push through to have this session on tonight, but I tried to do my best to be obedient and be here with y'all. Unless I really can't make it, then I'll reschedule. But we here. We went over a couple of updates and so forth. And what I was saying was that there was a session going on Clubhouse. And if you're not on Clubhouse, download and install Clubhouse. Create you an account and follow me at DivineProspect so we can walk together along this journey amongst a whole bunch of other opinions that's floating out there. You get to see it's the wild west, man, of social media. This is a wild place, man. And so what I did was I was looking for the room that I saw right before I got on live that I was listening to, and pretty much the name of the room, so you guys can know, is called Who's Speaking Actual Facts, Ramses versus Moses. Hop in, right? So the mods of this room, the main mods of this room, they're like let me see, they are the individuals who believe that we are like they said in a previous session that they actually recorded that I was in, that Egypt is America, like literally, not like symbolically, but Egypt is in America, and they believe that there was no transatlantic slave trade. They believe that we are from this part of the world. They believe that the pyramids in this side of the world are older, better, and greater than the ones that is in so-called Egypt today. And I tried to delve into these theories with them, and it didn't really line up right because as facts was coming out, they started over talking and so forth. So that's what they do. So typically what I try to do when I get pinged into rooms like this, I try to listen like we're doing right now. The individual that's speaking is an elder who's in Nuwabian Nation, who practice Nuwapu. That is a community that was created by Malachi Z. York. Currently, Malachi Z. York is in prison for accusations that he was convicted of. He's in triple max security, if I'm not mistaken, triple max prison. And this is one of the elders who is part of the Nuwabian Nation. I guess he's addressing the Christians, Jews, and Muslims in the room. And I guess this is his soapbox to speak. So what I was simply trying to do is give y'all some insight of some of the discussions that be going down in Clubhouse. There's some others other than this, but I just thought this was very peculiar because it's stuff like this that when people start preaching this stuff, a lot of people who are part of congregations, and you have a teacher, a moray, a pastor, an overseer, imam, or whoever who is not properly addressing questions, inquiries, and concerns, you start getting itchy ears. You hear stuff like this, and you say, "Oh, we the people of the sun." right? And then what happens is they say, oh, Jews and Christians and Hebrews or whatever can't address these questions, and they don't even know the Bible. And then, the ones of us that do know, we come in there and start asking real questions and addressing real questions. And then they're like, oh, no, see, you don't really understand. You're still under the spell of spelling. I'm under the spell of spelling. And then I asked him, how do you spell Nuwabu? And he spelled it. I said, wait, you are also under the spell of spelling. You just spelled something. Yo, I be killing them in there. Yo, they be mad, bro. They be really salty. They be kicking me down to the audience. They be muting me. And I don't even be over talking, come out of the pocket. I be respectful. But they don't want the truth to come out. They don't, they only say this to people who it goes over their heads. Because I've studied all of this. I've been studying Nuwapu stuff since 2016. And that was about, what, 6, 7, 8 years almost. I've been studying that for some time. No, 6. I'm bugging. 6 years. A little over 6 years. I think when I got exposed to it, it was back in 2012 when I really started doing some serious research. It was actually, no, I'm not telling the truth. Actually, it was 2014 when I started doing real research. And I know that because Polite used to be a Nuwabian, and I had conversations with Polite about Dr. York's works. And I even tested Polite to see if he knew some Nuwapu as far as the language is concerned. And I kind of wrote out some words and stuff. And he was like, what's that? I'm like, it's Nuwapu, you know it, right? So yeah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, okay, just checking. But then when I got into serious study is when I was going to debate a Nuwabian back in 2016, and it never materialized. You know what I mean? So I want to say even babes, right? Babes. Well, yeah, babes, depending on how you coin the term babes. Those who are not on the meat of the word understand a lot about the culture, sister cultures, the ancient Near East, and all of that. When you know this stuff, when people start talking all this stuff, it don't phase you. You're like, okay. Matter of fact, the books and stuff that we put on the Patreon, it exposes you to everything, even opinions that's against what we believe. I put it out there. Why? Because the people in this audience are strong enough to eat that meat. Right, we have a firm foundation that no matter what we're exposed to is not going to shake us off of what Yah has placed us. And it's people like this who just got to keep talking and talking and talking and do not allow room for other people to speak. This is crazy. I'm gonna ask again. He said Gucci man.
Smoke a pound today and we're gonna sniff all this. Nah, put in the background. Talk to children. And if you're a youngster, you know what I'm saying? Seek an elder that's gonna give you good advice. Cause we got a lot of ignorant ass elders out there. Young boy, come over here, young boy. I got something for you. Here, have the first person, right, that gives you that beer to drink was your black devil. The first person that gives you that liquor to drink was your black devil. The first person to put a spliff in your goddamn mouth was your black devil. You know why? Because they were deprogramming your DNA into something that's not natural by nature. That's going to assist your brain in development, right? Because we have to now get into brain development, and once we get into that,
all right, we're gonna
unlock the DNA and the dormant aspect of our DNA. Then we can come together as a people and move forward. Dr. York said it. We Sabians are the saviors. We are the saviors, right? What's his name again? The Mashiach. The Mashiach is a body of people. A body of people.
All right.
That came under the tutelage.
I told somebody to ping me when he's off that soapbox. All right. Otherwise, so what I want to say, I want to address this too. This is very important because this is something among many things I've been experiencing on Clubhouse. Is when people who despise, and shout out to Terrell. I had a great conversation with the brother Terrell on this. When people make all these claims, like they'll dismiss something and then you ask them why, and then they'll give you all the pseudo stuff and like, oh, okay. Yeah, I see. Okay. It was like, what's going on? With the advent of recent archaeology in the past, I would say 60, 75 years, the light shed on the Bible has increased The Bible can now be studied within its ancient Near Eastern background, which if you don't understand it, then some elements of the scriptures will not make sense. Now in 2022, we can learn the biblical languages and read it in the original text. And if you don't even know the language, there's tools you can go on and utilize these tools to read the text in the original language and understand what's going on, right? And then you have resources like this, the Cultural Background Study Bible, bringing to life the ancient world of scripture, that puts the scripture against its ancient Eastern background and gives you insight into some of the topics, subject matters, idioms, colloquies, etc., all of that that's mentioned in the scriptures by looking at it against its ancient Eastern background. There's also from Bar Ilan University a course that I put on the Patreon that you guys can check out that again teaches you the Bible against the ancient Eastern background. And the reason why I say that's important is because when people come to you with this Sumerian, Akkadian, Assyrian, Babylonian, Egyptian, right? They think they got some deep knowledge. Sometimes they'll go stretch out even further and they'll go to the Indus Valley and they go even further to the Yellow River and all of this. They'll even extend it that far and they'll impose that stuff on something else that does not belong, or they try to make it seem like, oh, the Bible is plagiarized. I'm like, it is. Do you know plagiarism is a legal term, a contemporary legal term that nobody was plagiarizing back then? If so, can you show me a case where that was done? No, easily shut down, right? All of this nonsense that people be saying, I just be like, wow, this is the stuff that's drawing people away? This is crazy. It's crazy. Now, let me just slow down for a second. I saw the individual sister named Melissa, all right? So Sister Melissa Miller, how are you? You said somebody sent you this way. Shout out to Jay Fierson in the building. My brother Hakodesh Management in the building. I see you. Shalom. Remnant Call of Royal Priesthood. Stanley Fields in the building. Shalom, Elder. What's going on? Emmanuel Curry. Shalom. And Delaware. That's what I'm talking about. What's going on? So Sister Melissa, I see you here. You said that you are coming into the truth or something like that. I'm more than happy to address any questions that you may have. Feel free to, my brother D Red in the building from the H-Town. What's going on, my brother? So let me do this, right? Let me do this. If the sister is willing, I'm going to put the link there in the chat. I want to have a candid conversation with the sister Melissa. If you're hearing, please click on the link. Let me dialogue with you because, again, I don't know who sent you this way. I don't know what concerns or whatever else that you may have. So let me know. All right. So Solomon Ben David says, can you give us some insights in the book that you're reading, The Sons of the Raphaim? Yeah. So the major premise of that book is to look into Phoenician culture, Ugaritic culture, and Hebrew culture, and look at the term Rapha that's used and the term Raphaim that's used. And what they have determined is that in the Phoenician culture, we don't have a lot of extant works written about the Rephaim. However, they're inscribed on sarcophagus of kings. But when we go into the Ugaritic text, we have a little bit more data that these are semi-divine entities that are worshipped, so to say, by the Canaanite peoples. And they become the great kings, the judges, and the leaders, and the wise men amongst various tribes in Canaan, and that when they are killed or when they die, typically they're not killed, but when they die, there's this royal feast that's done, and all the Rephaim come together and they bring all these people with them, and all the people of nobility and royalty wish that they can have a death like these Rephaim, like they worship these entities, right? When you get into the scripture sees these entities as something that's adversarial, because they are the product of an illicit union between these Bene Elohim and women, okay? And they produce what's called the Nephilim, and the Rephaim are connected to the Nephilim. And pretty much what the book is trying to do is get a consensus of looking at Phoenician culture, Ugaritic culture, and Hebrew culture, and try to present an understanding of who these Rephaim are and why some cultures revere them and why other cultures actually hate them, right? So hopefully that answers the question. The Institution of Torah Learning and Research. Can you show the book cover, or what book you talking about? The one I was just talking about? Is that the one you're talking about? Is that what you're talking about? The Institution of Torah Learning and Culture? All right. I don't know if Sister Melissa's still there. I didn't see all of her comments. Maybe y'all can catch me up to speed of what she was saying. Shout out to Elkim Barlow in the building. Shalom. Let me see. Tracy H. Shalom. I see you. What's going on, sis? Ben Yehuda. Shalom. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Definitely. All right. Never mind. Hold on one second, family. Hold on one second. Yes, sir.
I made it.
Hold on. One second. I'm gonna switch my speakers.
I didn't know I was gonna have a close up.
Let me switch my speakers. Hold on.
I didn't know I was gonna have a close up. Let me put my light on right, so you can hear me or see
All
me.
right, I can hear you. Yep, I can hear you.
Cool.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. No complaints.
I mean, I'm sitting here with no air conditioning, so I could be.
You are. Oh wow. I'm sorry about that.
It's okay.
Yep. So
I probably needed to stay out of it for a few days or something, you know.
Yeah, teach you how to be more resilient. Right?
Exactly. That's exactly what I told myself for the past 3 days.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you for joining this session. You must be new here, I think, based on what you were saying in the comments earlier.
Yeah.
So what brought you here?
I was sorry, I'm like excited.
It's okay.
I'm like, finally someone's gonna talk to me that's not me. Like I was commenting on like a Hebrew Israelite page, which is probably my first mistake, but I was asking like a genuine question, and after I said it, it came to remembrance in the scriptures. I don't know where I've read it, but it said there's a difference between Hamites and Negroes. I don't know the exact passage, but I remember being like light bulb in my brain. And I was asking about Jacobites specifically because I did my husband's lineage and I found it all the way back to the 400s, and there were like lords and ladies and all and princes and all that. And his family was like part of the Jacobite rebellion. And the reason that kilts were illegal for so long was because the Jacobites lost that rebellion and they wore kilts. So I'm like, okay. Oh, I can't hear you. Uh-oh. Let me turn you up here. Maybe I can hear you.
That's me. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
That was me. I had it muted by accident.
That's okay.
I was saying there was several of those Jacobite rebellions. There's one in 1715, one in 1745, etc. So there was a couple of them. But yes, I'm familiar with that history. Yep.
So I was kind of shocked to find that. And then I literally couldn't find anything on my lineage. In Europe, a lot of my family was killed with Hitler or scattered at that time. I still have family there. The name is Leone, which means lion. I don't know enough about that, so I don't comment on it. And then my family here in America, the Welch side was like dirt poor farmers, and the Cherokee Indians, and so I'm like over here questioning, like, okay, but like, how do you guys think that you're the people in the Bible? Like, I'm not being condescending. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just like, why do you believe what you believe? And what really started bringing me to truth was actually homeschooling my child and teaching her about Babylon. I was doing the Time for Learning platform. It was like an online school program. And I started going, I'd never learned about the Aztecs, the Mayans, the Babylonian system. Like, they didn't teach us any of that in school. And when they taught us about the time period of the Trail of Tears, they taught us the gold rush. They didn't teach us what was going on the flip side. There's like a missing 100-year period that like we don't know anything about, and it's extremely hard to find. So I just started asking basic questions, and I grew up with my grandma telling me that the Pope was the Antichrist, and I used to laugh. But I was kind of like, well, maybe she knows something because she lived through the Stalin, Mussolini, Hitler, Pope thing, and she was a little girl. So so I got really like into the surnames thing for a minute, just because I thought it was fascinating, because what it was showing me is that my people were killed everywhere for some reason. And then on the flip side of it, my husband's family killed us all. So like, you know, I'm like sitting here going like, what? What do I do with that? It doesn't matter.
That sounds crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, but you know, because the covenant, like from my understanding, the covenant's for anyone that comes to the truth, you know, and that's a grace thing. And I don't want to debate all that right now, but I guess I was getting at like, I'm genuinely asking as an American citizen raised in America, and I'm going, this looks a lot like Egypt. This looks a lot like Babylon. I've always, since I was a kid, I've always thought that it's a weird system. Like I never understood having to send my kids to school and stuff. But and I always resisted like all of it, the vaccines, everything. For some reason, I'm just like, what? I don't understand this. And I came out like that, and that was a very big problem. In my family, I was raised by an alcoholic and a narcissist, just to be honest. So my trauma wounds have kept me in this place of like, I can't be right about this, but I was like awakened the eve of 9/11, and literally the eve of 9/11, like before the Trade Center thing. And I have this crazy testimony. It was in LA, musician, the whole bit. And Jesus literally pulled me out and was like, go out of Sodom and Gomorrah. So for me, I'm like, this is like a real thing. This is really real. I don't know why it's not real for other people, but it's really real. And I have a genuine desire to understand the differences between the white people culture and the black people culture. Like I don't want a war in any way, shape, or form. I think that more than anything, we're still family. At the end of the day, we're all mixed at this point. Like that's my understanding of it. So, and I just get met with like a lot of hostility for asking those questions. So anyway, he pointed me your direction and said, you should go on there because you can openly ask questions like this and see, you know, because I don't think anyone knows it all. I think that we're all going to know in the moment when we see Messiah with our eyes. And that's another thing. I'm like, why is everybody calling him all these new names? And why are there new Bibles? And isn't that exactly what the Antichrist says he's going to do? Or isn't that what the Bible says the Antichrist is going to do? Change times and laws and the name? Can you hear me? Are you frozen?
Nope, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
So go ahead, continue. I'm listening.
Yeah, so like I genuinely ask about the name Yahuwah and Yahusha and all that, and I understand that it's that there's perversion in the name because my Bible says that. But my Bible also says in Revelation 19 that he's coming with a new name that no man knows save for him, written on his thigh.
Correct.
So I bring all these points up, and I don't know, I get called all kinds of things, and because my skin's not black, they're like, you're white, you're stupid, you're gonna die.
Well, I mean, and just like any particular religious community, you have your conservatives, you have your moderates, you have your liberals, right? So it just depends on what sect you encounter, what their disposition is, what their doctrine is, what their worldview is. All of that is going to determine how they communicate with somebody that's outside of that circle. So that's why if you are genuine and wanting to know at least some of the core foundations of what that particular position stands on, you can't speak to somebody who's 100% conservative because they may not be open to discussion, right? Because they feel that you're an outsider and therefore there's no need for me to even share that information with you, right? With me, I'm considered more of a moderate, so I'm like in between. And the reason why is because I see some truth in both the position that conservatives take and the liberals take, and able to have that middle ground that I deem to be a bridge, right, between the both. So that way, when somebody speaks to our community or encounters our community, some degree of diplomacy and tact is conveyed. So that way, people can understand where we're coming from and what we represent, what we're about, right? So you made a lot of comments about some very insightful stuff in regards to your history, your husband's history, your background, your family lineage, teaching your children, different doctrines you've encountered in your walk, right, etc.
Right.
And because somebody did send you this way, I do want to address some of those concerns. More importantly, I think the one that you made was, those of us who identify as Israelites, we make a claim that we have lineage that goes back to what people will call Black Jews in West and Central Africa who have migrated there from Israel, right? And there are tons of primary sources that demonstrate this fact and this knowledge. And in the regions and where these Black Jews existed was in the various cities where slave ports were at, where slave raiding was done, and those communities were destroyed, vanished during the transatlantic slave trade, right? So after the slave trade was over, no trace of these communities could be found. And there's several reasons for that, but I definitely want to share a couple of these facts with you so you can kind of get an idea of where we're coming from. And then we will taper off from there. Oh, I think she dropped off. Okay. Y'all said I'm frozen? Am I frozen? Is that me? Is that me frozen again? Am I good? I think she dropped off. I'm gonna throw the link back in the chat again because we about to give some real information. All right, so Melissa, it looks like you froze. So hopefully you can get back in. And if so, click the link in the chat. If you have Wi-Fi, because I think you're on your phone, you may want to connect to the Wi-Fi in your house and maybe get off of your mobile data network if that's the issue. But shout out to Malka by Israel. Y'all said I'm good. All right, cool. All right. Shout out to Chief Ara Da Yawesh Yashakar Shalom. Okay. Sir Araya Ari Yahawada Shalom. Lioness Judah Shalom. I don't know. Aharon. If one of y'all, shout out to Roy the chef, is going on, King. I'm waiting for that track, man. Don't please, man. You trying to pull me out of retirement, bro. I'm trying to chill, man. You about to change the game with all of us on there, man. I don't know. I'm gonna keep down the raps. It's a little teaser so people can kind of anticipate what's about to go down. But shout out to you, Love Y'all. Hey, I'm waiting for her to jump back in. Melissa, I'm gonna drop the link one more time. I'm just gonna wait. We're gonna keep talking until you come back in. Shout out to Bishop Les Hunter. Shalom. The Bible and me. What's going on? Oh yeah, it's time to go in, but I gotta wait till she come back. When she come back, all those questions you asked, I can answer all of that. The Jacobite rebellion and all of that. Some of y'all may not even know about that history. Matter of fact, I'll throw a book on the Patreon about that. All right. No doubt, Roe. I got you, King. A lot of stuff she was saying is stuff that y'all know, some stuff I shared on here. Some stuff I haven't, but I mean, there's answers for almost everything. The key thing is who's willing to take the journey to discover it, right? And the journey is going to have its ups and downs, and that's part of the journey. And I think sometimes what happens when you are on this journey for truth, a lot of times when you can't find it, you get stuck, you get confused and frustrated. A lot of people throw their hands up in the air and they say, oh, well, and they go another way. And they don't realize that that's part of the journey. The difficulty is part of the journey, especially if you're a pioneer, right? So we want to see to address all these things. So I'm trying to see if she's, I guess she's not there. All right. Well, so anyway, so the point I'm trying to make is, so on that journey, you're going to encounter all types of people, right? And again, the people that watch this channel, we got all types of Israelites that watch this channel, right? Our organization, aside from the teaching apparatus, organization where we do community work and programs and products and services and stuff, it's made up of a conglomerate of Israelites all across the spectrum, right? The Israelites that we help in the community is all types of Israelites, right? And this chat is all types of Israelites, right? Now there's some KHM family in the building that are aligned with the teachings, because the teachings is one element and then the community part is a different element, right? But one thing that that we're about is that we like to speak to anybody about this truth, so that way they can get an objective perspective on what it is that we try to convey. So I think, Melissa, I see you. Back. I anticipate what's about to go down, but Shout out to you, love y'all. Yay, I'm waiting for her to jump. Sister Melissa?
I hear.
Okay, I think am I playing on a TV or something, or a computer?
Yeah, we'll turn you down. You see, can you hear that now, or are you good?
No, that's fine. I'm good.
Okay.
All right. So what I want to do is I want to start you off on this journey so you can understand why we make the claim that we make, that we have lineage back to the ancient Israelites, or what people term the phrase the people of the book. That term typically comes from the Quran, the people of the book, which refers to Jews during the time of Muhammad, and why we make this claim. So it's not like we're just making this claim because, you know, quote unquote, Black people in America, due to the history that we had, our ancestors have endured, we've been disconnected from our culture, our language, our ancestral lineage, etc. So a lot of times, you know, we are on this journey to discover who we are, right? And then, you know, after the quote unquote Civil War, during the time of Reconstruction, there was a period of time where Black people were trying to find an identity, right? Because we've been severed. And when I say Black people, I'm talking about mainly the ones that's on mainland North America, right? We're trying to find an identity and discover who we are. So way back in the 1800s, you had individuals by the name of F.S. Cherry and William Saunders Crowdy. And these are individuals who had visions and revelations that people in America, Black people in America, were descendants of ancient Israelites. Now, the basis of them making that claim at that time was pretty rudimentary. You know, the ability for them to actually research and study was pretty much limited. However, F.S. Cherry and William Saunders Crowdy were Masons. So therefore, as a Mason, you do have access to more knowledge that the typical person doesn't. So that afforded them the capability to do more research and other people were unable to. And then later on, you had this huge emigration from the Caribbean to mainland North America, which brought several other figures our way, such as Josiah Ford, which is one particular individual. Another particular individual is the founder of the Commandment Keepers. Can't believe the brother's name escaped me. I was just talking about him yesterday. And several other immigrants, right? You also have Marcus Mosiah Garvey, who's also came here from Jamaica. So we had a lot of immigrants that was coming here, seeing the plight and the condition of Blacks in America. And a lot of them were rubbing soldier to soldiers with Ethiopian Jewry, or what they call the Beta Israel people, right? So a lot of Ethiopians were also migrating to the Americas, and they were living in what's called ghettos, right? And they set up their communities side by side with African American communities. They had their places of worship that they would go to. African Americans would go there. They would be indoctrinated into Judaism, but the form of Judaism would be Ethiopian variant. And then from there, over time, the Ethiopians were sharing with African Americans that they also have a heritage to being Jews, you know, and sharing that information with them. Again, the sophistication of them being able to show all the data at that time was limited. But today in 2022, we have an extensive array of data. So I'm going to go through a summary of the journey so you can kind of get an idea. And then from there, I'm going to pile on for you all of these primary sources and secondary and tertiary sources so that you can see that this is what we're talking about. Before we start.
Before you start, I have one other question.
Sure.
You're talking about, like, you don't know where you're from and you don't know your heritage and all that, and you're kind of on this journey to find out who you are. But like, that's kind of how I feel too. I'm like, I don't know anything about my family, and the only family I could find is dirt poor farmers that were like ridiculously poor, like indentured servants probably got land to farm because that's what they were, dirt poor farmers. So
I'm gonna say this to you, right? And maybe this will be for a separate conversation for us. I can definitely assist you with that.
Okay.
There are various tools, websites, and expert organizations that do this type of thorough research on anybody's ancestral history, right? So if you're really sincerely seeking that, you can go do DNA, you could go do governmental documentation, family records, archive records, microfiches, etc., that trace you all the way back to your earliest ancestors here in the Americas, and then those ancestors from Europe or from the Middle East or elsewhere where your family lineage has come from, right? Okay. So that would be a separate conversation. I have no problem engaging that with you. Matter of fact, my email and my contact information is in the description below. So after this video, maybe sometime this weekend, reach out to us and we'll set up a one-on-one discussion and I can assist you with that. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. So, with that, what I was saying, to show you what the journey looks like. So to give you an idea of what the journey looks like, what I'm going to do is bring up a map and I'm going to show you how this took place, right? And then I'm going to give you time markers and I'm going to give you primary sources, right? And for those of you who are watching, take some notes. A lot of this data I have on the Patreon. So those of you already Patreon already know, you're already familiar with this, or I did a lecture back in 2018 where I talked about some of this stuff as well. But this is all going to be part of an upcoming lecture. And again, this is not even all the information. I'm just giving her a good amount so she can get an idea of where these claims come from. Okay. All right. So here's Google Map. Let me pull it up on the screen so we can take a look at, Let me zoom out. Let's go over here. Okay. All right. Let me share my screen. All right. All right. Let me know if you can see my screen. Let me know when y'all can see my screen. Can you see my screen, Melissa?
Yep.
All right, cool. Give me 1 second. Let me grab some water. I'll be right back, okay?
Okay.
All right. All right. Now One Technologies. If we had the time tonight, I would bring you on and talk about that, but I'm gonna save that for another discussion. Feel free to come on to our next live stream and we can definitely have a conversation on that. All right. Rowan, chill, bro, chill. All right. So if you're looking here on the screen, all right, let me zoom in. All right. Okay, so I see that. Do you identify as a Christian, Melissa?
I mean, I did growing up, but I don't go to Christian churches anymore. I started reading my Bible and I was like, that's not what that says.
Yeah, forget the religious body, right? The actual building or institution.
I'm a follower of Jesus Christ.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, no problem. All right. So the reason why I asked that, because that means you are familiar with the Bible and different stories in the Bible, correct?
Yes. And I know the difference between the one promoted by the Catholic Church and the one that I know is different.
Okay. So, all right, cool. No problem. All right. So historically speaking, when we look at this map, right, and this is a good resource for you. Matter of fact, since we're talking about resources, one thing that I like to do here is give people sources outside of my own opinions and what I say so they can go back and fact check the things that I'm saying. Geography is extremely important, understanding everything that we're about to go into in detail, because without knowledge of geography, anytime you see place names in the Bible or outside the Bible about where the Jews have gone, will go over one's head and they won't be able to really connect the dots. So here's a book right here. Let me show you the book real quick. I probably don't even need the Google Maps. I could just show you in the book real quick. Let me pull it up.
That's the one thing I noticed too that actually got me really into studying the Bible more, is because when I started to realize the connections between Egypt and Babylon, and I started to know that they don't put the, you know, the continents to scale and all of that. There's like a land bridge that went from Alaska, like Asia, connecting right there, but it's under water now. Like stuff like that was just blowing my mind.
Yeah, the Siberian Strait. Yeah, I got you. That's cool. So what I want to show you is this book right here. I may have to zoom in a little bit. This book right here is a Bible atlas, right? It's called Bible Atlas from the Access Foundation by Zane Ridling, PhD, is the editor. Okay. And this is important because Bible atlases, like I said, show you the geography of the ancient Near East. so you can be familiar with it, because city names, place names, rivers, bodies of water, mountain peaks, valleys, all of that have names, right? From the ancient world to today. And the problem is, when we don't understand these things, a lot of times, a lot of what's being said in the text goes over our head, because the people of that time took geography very seriously, right? And when we learn the Bible, they typically teach it to us from a theological perspective without giving us the cultural element, which actually cements the understanding of everything else. It brings everything else together and it holds it together, right? So here, what we're looking on the map is going to give you several areas that was known during the ancient times. The most important thing I want to show you first is I'm going to scroll down, and we're going to go into not the topography, which this is right here. We're going to go into the settlements of where certain people groups settled. Okay. So let me see if I can get that here. The Hebrew Bible period before Abraham. Nope. We're going to go to the next one right after that. Actually, yeah, we can do that. All right. So do you see this map right here?
Yeah.
This map coincides with Genesis chapter 10. Genesis chapter 10 gives you what's called the Table of Nations. That's the one that showed you where different people groups settled at.
You don't have. I'll save you your breath. You don't have to go that deep into it, because I just spent 2 years studying Genesis and Exodus.
Okay, cool.
So I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Okay. So you see the areas where Ham, Shem, and Japheth, where they settled, right? The red would be Japheth, the green would be Ham, and Shem would be yellow, right? So looking at these various territories and where people groups settled, this is what we're dealing with right now. Abraham comes on the scene. You know, he covenants with Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh. He is in what we call of the Chaldeans, right? Now that term Chaldean would be an anachronistic, what we call an anachronistic text, which means it's something that is a contemporary term that's used to describe something in the past. So the Chaldeans did not exist during the time of Abraham. Whenever the text was redacted, that part of Genesis, it was redacted to people who were already familiar with who the Chaldeans are and where was at. So they used that term and that phrase so they could be familiar where the book picks up to where Abraham is at. We don't know if that's his land of nativity. We just know that when the text opens up in Genesis chapter 11, towards the end, this is where Abraham is at, right? And then in Genesis 12, the covenant is made with him in Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh, and then he begins his journey, right? And then he has a son named Isaac, right? And then he has a son named Jacob. Jacob wrestles with an angel. He gets his name changed to Israel, and then he has several sons, 12 sons. And then out of his 12 sons, Joseph steps out of the 12 to be commenced to be the successors of the seed of Abraham, who will go and take over the land of Israel, where at that time was called Canaan. Now, the Levites were not granted territory, so they were removed out of the allotment, and that was substituted with Joseph and Levi for Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. And then they are the two that filled in the places for Joseph and Levi to take territory in the land of Canaan, which then became Israel. Okay. So long story short, and again, I'm trying to speed through this. Long story short, once they settled in those regions, you know, they was in Egypt for X amount of years, couple hundred years. It was in Egypt. Moses was brought up in Egypt. As you know, his mother saved him from being killed. He grew up in the house of Pharaoh for 40 years. He wound up killing somebody, leaving out. He ended up in Midian, which is in the Transjordan region. And after he was in Midian for 40 years, the Most High called him, right? And just so you know, so we can see where we're at, we're right here, right? So Midian is down here. And the place where Esau and his descendants, the Edomites, they settled in Edom, which is north of Midian. Midian is right here, and Edom is north of Midian, okay? So Moses was there for 40 years. He was called. He went back into Egypt. He brought the Israelites out, and they were in this region here, right? This region right here, not the Sinai Peninsula. They were in this region right here for 40 years until they made their way north, all the way here. All right. And then with Joshua, after Moses dies, Joshua is his successor. They cross over the Jordan River, And then crossing over the Jordan River, they enter into Jericho, which is right here. All right. And they attack Jericho. Then they go to Ai and then Hazor. Then after that, they have other skirmishes where they take over the land. The book of Judges commences. They're mingled amongst the Canaanite peoples. The Israelites obey for a period of time. Then they disobey. When they disobey, the Most High sends tribes to afflict them. They cry out for a deliverer. He sends deliverers, right? And this is where we hear the stories of various people like Deborah, of Barak, of Samson, you know, of several of these characters that we know during that period of time. After all of this is said and done, Samuel is raised up as the last judge of Israel. He's the one that commences to crown David king. But before he even deals with David, he crowns Saul king. Saul disobeys. The Most High removes Saul, puts David in place, and then David is ruling a unified Israel. So all the tribes are under the auspices and rule of David. After David dies, Solomon takes over. Solomon is living in a period of time where he's thriving, right? But then Solomon disobeys at the end of his lifetime. So the Most High splits the kingdom in two between Solomon's son Rehoboam and Jeroboam, who was the person that Solomon had hired to work over the building projects of Israel, right? So then there's a split kingdom at that point, and it continues to stay a split kingdom. Long story short, the northern tribes are attacked by the Assyrians in 722 BCE. They're sacked by the Assyrians, and the Assyrians take them and they remove a lot of the upper middle class and the upper class, and they put them into Babylon. And then they take foreign peoples from Babylon and they place them into Samaria, which is the capital of the northern tribes territory. And then as more time commences in 701, they make several attempts to siege and take over Jerusalem. They sack Lachish, take Lachish. They tried to attack Jerusalem, but it was too heavily fortified and they're unable to take over Jerusalem. However, they made the Jews of that time their vassals, right? And that's until the Babylonians come on the scene. The Most High uses the Babylonians to punish the Assyrians for what they did to the Israelites. The Babylonians come on the scene. They come face to face with the Jews in the south. And eventually the Jews in the south get taken over in about 597 is the first siege where some people are taken away, Ezekiel being one of them. And 587 is the last siege on Jerusalem, where they take most of the middle class and upper class out. They leave the poor behind and they bring them into Babylon for about 70 years. Okay. Now, just so you know, during this period of time, when the Assyrians came and attacked the northern tribes, some of those northern tribes, they went into the south, and some of them left and went even further into Egypt. When the Babylonians came and attacked, also you had waves of Jews leave out of the land and go into Egypt. Okay, this is important. So they're already migrating and going into Egypt, right? So they end off in Egypt along the Nile River. And if you go all the way down to the lowest cataracts, right, to a place called Elephantine Island, some of northern tribes had settled there. And some of the texts that they had was a little bit more unique than, I can say more unique, but a little bit unique than the text that we have today. And that's because even though they had a lot of oral traditions that would later on be written down, the thing that they mostly had were things recorded by the royal court, which would be some of the Psalms and some of the history about David and Joshua. But everybody would have been familiar with what we call the Torah, the Chumash, the first 5 books, which is Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. So they would have had that knowledge. Some of that probably would have traveled with them in their scattering. But they came all the way here and they settled along this region right here, along the Nile region and the lowest cataracts of Egypt, right? Now, you had another group that was taken into Babylon, right, which is modern day Iraq, right, in this region here, right, taken into Babylon. They would stay there for 70 years, and then a beckoning call was for them to come back when the Persians came and took over the scene from the Babylonians. And the Cyrus cylinder was a decree for all peoples been displaced by the Babylonians to return back to the land of their nativity, and that they can resume their religious practices as long as they pay a tribute, right? And that's when the Persians is on the scene. During this time in the Bible is during the time of Ezra and Nehemiah, and they commence a reform, and the reform is designed to bring all the peoples of Israel together, and that stays that way all the way until the Greeks come on the scene. right? The Greeks come on the scene, they take over, they become a redemptor. However, during the I would say the rule, the reign of Alexander the Great, he wanted to commence this thing called Hellenism, which is to bring all peoples that they had conquered into Greek culture, learning Greek language, right? So one of the ways to do so is any books that these peoples had, he wanted it to be translated into Greek, and that's where we get the Pentateuch, which is the first 5 books of Moses, but translated in Greek. And then later on, we get the rest of the Septuagint, which is the rest of the Old Testament translated in Greek, right? This happens during the Grecian period. During that period of time, there's a revolt against the Greeks by the Jews because Antiochus IV, he desecrates the temple by slaying a pig on the altar. So this commences the Maccabean revolt. After the Maccabean revolt, the Jews finally win this battle. They set up the Hasmonean dynasty, which is a separate, smaller kingdom that was autonomous, and that lasted until the Romans came on the scene, and it broke down due to infighting and due to infiltration by the Romans by getting informants that worked within that dynasty to take that dynasty down. And then the Jews become subject to another people group, another nation again, and this time it's the Romans, right? So in 66 AD, a lot of tension is rising between the Jews and the Romans, and eventually the Jews go to war with the Romans. They have a 3.5-year war, which commenced in 70 AD, where the temple in Jerusalem is sieged and sacked. And we have the Arch of Titus, which was dated to about 80 AD, which shows the Roman soldiers plundering the items in the temple, right? Because remember, the temple was destroyed by the Babylonians, and it was rebuilt during the time of the Persians, right? Now, why am I mentioning all of this? Well, remember, the first wave of these Israelites that were scattered was during the period of 721, and that was during the period of time when the Assyrians come on the scene. The second scattering was in 587 BCE, which was the final siege on Jerusalem by the Babylonians. Then we have another scattering, which means they're scattering in different places, but the focus that I'm going to show you today is the focus on the scattering going towards the west, right? And then there's a final scattering that happens in 70 AD once the temple was sieged and sacked. Then you had a group of Jews that leave out of Israel, and then they also escape to the west. Some escape east. Some stay in Israel and commence 2 further wars with the Romans, the 115 AD war and then the 135 AD war, which the Jews lose all of these wars, right? However, in the 4th century, the Romans decided to disband these people groups for the most part out of the land so that they wouldn't have further revolts. And this is when you have your last Sanhedrin council that was commenced by Hillel II. And then after that council, shortly afterwards, the Jews were dispersed even further. Okay, so looking at these groups of Jews that have been dispersed going this way, we want to see what happens to these Jews along this region. All right, the first thing we want to take a look at is Elephantine Island. Right, so I'm going to type it in here. I'm gonna bring up a resource, right? All right, so
it's hard to see the map, but like it's hard to see what you're pointing at, but you're gonna post this, right? So I can go back and
yeah. Can you see? I think you're on your phone, so it might be
yeah, it's really, really tiny, and I don't want to be watching the TV at the same time, you know. But I'm listening. I'm trying to soak it all in so that I can okay. I'm a very audible listener or learner, so
I think I wasn't sharing that anyway, but let me show it to you real quick. All right, so this is where Elephantine Island is, right here. Okay, and can you see the map now?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, yeah, I think I was still on the other atlas, but I'm on the map. So Elephantine Island is right here, right? So you had some Jews that went and they landed here, right? So what I'm going to do is show you a resource. It's called the Elephantine Papyri, and this was a resource that was discovered that had a series of letters, one of them being the Passover letter that was written by the Jews that was on this island to Jews that was in Jerusalem during the Persian reign, or whatever the case may be. And during that period of time, they wanted to synchronize the practice of Passover, right? So let me bring up that resource real quick, just for y'all see on the screen. And then from here, now I can jump into the primary resources showing this migration route, okay? Let me bring this up here. Let's do Elephantine. Appri. Whoop, there we go. All right, so the name of the resource, while it's loaded up on my end, is called The Elephantine Papyri in English, 3 Millennia of Cross-Cultural Community and Change. All right, so let me show that on the screen real quick. All right. So this is the book right here. The Elephantine Papyri in English, 3 Millennia of Cross-Cultural Continuity and Change by Bezalel Porton, right? This is from Brill Publishing. All right, so let me zoom out so you can see. And there's a reason why I'm showing you this. I just want to show you a section, all right, that go into the Aramaic text. These Aramaic texts, it starts here on page 74 and it goes to page 276. And it goes through various letters, right, that was saved, shared, exchanged, whatever, amongst the community of Jews that lived in that region. The most famous one is called the Passover letter, which is on page 125. And this is from the Jedaniah archive. And this is the one where they're writing correspondence to Jerusalem to try and synchronize the Passover. The Jews that lived on Elephantine Island were Jews that were considered part of the northern tribes. At first, it was assumed that they were Jews from the southern kingdom. However, upon further inspection, based on letters that was uncovered, that was revealed in the Biblical Archaeology Society, they have a magazine that they released called BAR, the Biblical Archaeology Review. In there, they did an assessment of the Amherst Papyrus and all of those letters. And what they discovered was that the community there was a mercenary community. So Egypt never had a standing army. Anybody who took over to Egypt just assumed the ways that Egypt was. Egypt never had a standing army. Anytime there was a battle, they would do a draft and they would draft people. And what happened is whenever they conquered other people groups, they would give them an opportunity to come and work in Egypt by giving them land as long as they was in the military, right? So they had a group of mercenaries there that were Babylonians, Syrians, and Jews that lived on that island. The peoples there on the island, they created a temple to Yod-Heh-Wahe there. They subscribed to the Divine Council, very interestingly enough, which depicts Israel as a henotheistic nation. And what happened was those people there had letters written that they had escaped from the north, from the Assyrian invasion via some captains from Judah that led them out of Assyria and into the southern tribes. And they went from there and they, waited till the Persian period when the Persians took over after the Babylonians. And then they used that opportunity to get drafted and took their families with them and settled in Elephantine. All right. And they have this is where we find a copy of Psalms that they have. That's a little different from the Psalms that we have in the text that we have today. But those people that lived there for an express period of time, and they were part of the northern tribes. So what started happening over time, we started to get waves and waves of these northern tribes that started to make their way there, and then they moved their way south. Now, what I want to read for you is a source, primary source that we have. Well, it's a secondary source about a primary source that we have about an individual by the name of Eldad Hadani. Have you heard that individual before? Eldad Hadani? Okay. So I'm going to give you some history about him real quick so you can see, because he's one of the first.
There you go.
All right. He was one of the first people to identify these groups of Jews that lived along the Nile River from Egypt all the way down to what we call Ethiopia, right? And we're going to see over time as those people groups start to migrate from there across mountain ranges into the Congo, and then from there into West Central Africa. And then we have some that travel what we call the sub-Saharan route and move their way over into West Africa. And I'm gonna show you some of these resources. So Eldad Hadani, right? Let me bring his source up real quick, and I'm gonna review this because a lot of people are not familiar with this, but it's a resource that's there that depicts where these Jews are at in Africa, right? In East Africa, right? So let me pull it up real quick. And for anybody following, if you have the Patreon, you could definitely follow because I have all this on the Patreon, right? So I'm going to show you this from my Patreon. Actually, I'm going to give y'all some free from the Patreon that you can read all because I want to share this on the screen. All right, so here it is. All right, let me know when you can see it.
I can see it.
All right, so this, I shared this way back July 27th, 2021, right? And this is eyewitness testimony from Eldad Khandani about where he saw the tribes of Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher in Ethiopia in the 9th century CE, right? This is from a source called the Bereshit Rabbati, right? The edition is by Albeck. And it says this: how did they, i.e. the aforementioned 4 tribes, arrive there? Arrive where? Where we call Ethiopia today. Our sages say that when Jeroboam ben Nebat arose and made 2 golden calves and made Israel err by succeeding from the kingdom of the house of David, he assembled the 10 tribes of Israel and ordered them, go forth and make war against Rehoboam and the inhabitants of Jerusalem. They said to him, why should we fight with our kinsmen, the citizens of our Lord David, the king of Israel and Judah? The elders of Israel came up to him and said to him, in all Israel there is not among us warriors and soldiers as mighty and skilled as the tribe of Dan. Command them to make war on Judah. Immediately Jeroboam said to the Danites, go forth and fight against Judah. They answered him, we swear by the life of our ancestor Dan that we will not make war against our own kinsmen and that we will not shed blood without cause. Then the Danites took up their swords, bows, and arrows and spears and resigned themselves to doing battle with Jeroboam until the Lord delivered them from having to shed the blood of their kinsmen. They made proclamation throughout the entire tribe of Dan, saying, let us flee, O Danites, and leave the land of Israel. We will go to Egypt. So this wave that leaves is leaving because they rebelled against Jeroboam, who wanted to make the Danites fight against the Jews or the southern tribe when they had a civil war. Okay, so this is showing you a wave even sooner than I mentioned earlier, right? Is this, it says here, is this where we should go? It is not already written in Torah. You will not see them again forever. They continue to discuss the possibility of invading Egypt or Ammon, but when they saw that it was written in the Torah that the Holy One, blessed be he, would prevent Israel from taking possession of their territories, he could give them good direction. The Danites went up opposite the river of Pishon and journeyed on camels, setting up encampments until they arrived among the rivers of Cush, which is today Sudan. They found the land to be rich, desirable, and broad, consisting of fields, vineyards, gardens, and parks. The inhabitants of the land did not prevent the Danites from dwelling there with them, and they formed an alliance with them. Okay, so it says the Cushites paid them tribute, and they dwelt with them for many years until they had grown very populous and numerous. After the death of Sennacherib, 3 tribes from Israel made the journey to them: Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. They journeyed, setting up encampments until they arrived next to the territory of the Danites. Each tribe spends 3 months a year killing the Cushites because they would keep going to war with them. Members of the tribe of Simeon are with the Danites, and the Levites are with these 3 tribes encamped in Havilah, where there is gold. Now, some people would say that Cush automatically means Sudan. No, Cush was considered any of the land south of Egypt. Today, we know it as Sudan, but it was even further south to that, all the way to what we call Ethiopia today, all right? It says they possess gold, for it is as common as stones, and very many flocks, herds, camels, horses. They sow and reap, they dwell in tents made, etc., right? And then we have from a Cambridge Geniza fragment. Geniza is a storage facility or whatever the case may be. And it says, these are tribes who have no knowledge about the destruction of the second temple, for they went into exile at the time of the first destruction. When Naphtali, Gad, and Asher were exiled before the destruction of the first temple, they gathered together adjacent to the Danites. So we're getting sources that are telling us the migration routes of how these Gadites, Naphtalites, Asherites, etc., made their way into what we call today Ethiopia, right? Or along the Nile River from Sudan all the way to Ethiopia, right? All right, so this is from Eldad, a book called Eldad's Travels, A Journey from the Lost Tribes to the Present, first edition by Micah J. Perry. You can pick that book up, or I can get it over to you. But here we start to see a migration of these Jews down the Nile River, okay? Settling in the areas that they settled. Now, there's more than that that goes into Eldad Khandani. What I'm going to do, just to save some time, probably just grab another quick source online that I can just read real quick for you, because then I will have to look up the book, and I'm trying to do this really fast. Let me see if I have another one here. Maybe I can pull the book up real quick. Let's see. Yeah. Okay, so let me do this. Okay. All right. All right, you. Oh, I think she dropped off. Are you there?
Yeah, I was trying to fix I wasn't. It was doing something weird when you were talking, so I was trying to fix it, and I exited it on accident.
Okay, no problem. All right, so what I want to show you is this resource from the book that this author wrote, because I want people to be familiar with the sources that I use, right? This is the author here, Michael J. Perry from the University of Haifa. Michael J. Perry is a senior lecturer for medieval Jewish history in the Department of Jewish History at the University of Haifa. His current research focuses on the social history of Jews and languages during the Middle Ages with an emphasis on bilingualism, documentary, culture, and history. Perry received his PhD in Jewish history from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. He has taught at UCLA and at Yale University. So you see the person who book that we was reading from? See this?
Yeah.
Source, can you see?
Yep.
Okay, so the reason why I'm showing this is because the way I do research, I grab experts in the field and I use their works when it comes to proposing any resources for a source, a primary source, secondary source, etc. All right. So he's the one that's responsible for the book that I made a reference to. He talks about Eldad Hadani. But to make a long story short, Eldad Hadani, he ventures towards his region. He seeds several more tribes, not just those tribes, 4 tribes. He sees all the 10 tribes of Israel with some Levites amongst them. And they have their own community set up. They don't have a kingdom per se, but they have community set up along the Nile River, going all the way down to the Great Lakes region, right? And they're just living there, right? All the tribes and, doing their daily so-and-so's. And he also says something very mystical. He says that, the river, Sabbatation, it stops on the Sabbath day. And that's when they know it's a time of rest, so they rest on that day. So he accounts all 10 tribes in Israel at that time. And what I'm going to show you is other resources from Jews in Europe who also know that the 10 tribes are in that region of the world, based on the accounts that was given by Eldad Hadani and other sources who have ventured in that region as well. Okay, so that's where we have them starting off there in that part of the world. And there's going to be 2 ways that they emigrate across Africa. So they're gonna emigrate through what we call Chad and make their way from Chad all the way through sub-Saharan Africa to West Africa, all the way as far as Senegal, Gambia, right? And then they're gonna have another wave that goes through Central Africa, where they leave from Ethiopia and make their way through the Congo and make their way to Central Africa, where we have a place in Luango where those Black Jews are at, and we have that identified. I'm
not really like debating that Black people weren't part of it. You know what I mean? Like I've done a lot of like other research, not just taking for me, this journey's been going on since 2001. Like it wasn't just 2020 for me, but 2020 was like when I was like, okay, now stop messing around, go study your Bible. And I'm like, oh, okay, that really does matter. What I'm like, I've gotten confirmation of what you're telling me. So it's helping me connect a lot of the things I've already seen. Like you said, like it's helping connect some of the dots. I don't understand why there's this weird, like anti-white thing, anti-Black thing on both sides. So how are they taking your history and applying it in that way? And how are white people doing the same exact thing? Because they are. Because you can go through, there's videos all over. Like I can send you a few of them if you want. When we email back and forth, I'll send you a couple of them. You can help me debunk them if they're BS. But there's just all of the things that you're citing are men. You know what I mean? And I'm like, okay, but the Bible says this, and I'm not debating anything that you're saying. I'm like, okay, I've read that. But at the same time, I don't know all of it intimately to be sitting here knowing like, okay, is this 100% the truth? Because I'm unraveling like a lot of what the Christian churches teach. They teach you this completely different version that basically you don't have to follow Torah and all of that, which I don't know that you do, because I think you're covered in grace. But at the same time, when you kind of come to these conclusions, you want to, because it's obedience.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then my second thing is that when I'm studying Genesis and Exodus, and you're building precept upon precept, and you're talking about the serpent will strike the heel and he will crush either the woman will crush the crown, right?
Mm-hmm.
That to me maybe points to Babylon building a tower, striking the heel of the Most High, and him crushing that. But he didn't do that. He scattered them, right? Like
Correct.
Right? And so that's what you're going through right now, is the scattering. But they did mix and mingle. We're all a mixed multitude now. And like Kings explains that they walked away. You even said it yourself. They walked away numerous times. And Galatians explains how it's spiritual adoption. So precept upon precept, when you talk about the two nations in the womb, and you talk about Jacob and Esau, and Jacob's the usurper, and Jacob literally means deceiver. And when I'm reading the scripture, I'm going like, okay, here's a guy that did all these weird deceptive things to his brother. Like his brother came in from the field. You know, Jacob dwelt in tents. Esau was a mighty hunter before the Lord. He came in from the field hungry, and Jacob was like, give me your birthright. And he's like, well, what good is my birthright if I'm dead? Give me the soup. Like, you know, like dude was willing to starve his brother for his birthright. That's what it looked like to me. And then going on to like the next thing with him, when Rebecca deceives Isaac, right, for the birthright, to get it to go to Jacob. And then you see Jacob kind of reap what he sowed with Laban. And then you see Jacob's fruit of his loins, the children of him, go out and murder Dinah's, I don't know, pagan boyfriend is what it kind of looks like to me, because it says that he loved her and that he spoke kindly to her, and he went and asked for her hand in marriage. And then they all got circumcised, and Jacob's kids went and murdered all of them deceptively. So I'm sitting here reading this going, this is not adding up to, I don't want to be part of these people, because by their fruits, they're not the tree that, and then people are like, well, he wrestled with an angel of the Lord and he broke his hip and changed his name to Israel. But I'm like, but what is that? How does that mean that he's chosen? And so these are the questions I've asked. And like,
let me address that for you. So you mentioned about Jacob, and you want to know how Jacob was chosen. That's what you said.
Yeah, like I don't understand. How could he be chosen? He's evil. Like everything his kids do. Like what is, like, I read the Bible in the Christian church with that, with those lenses. You know what I mean? Now I'm reading it for the first time, like really studying it, really wanting to know what's in there. And I'm like, this doesn't seem right with what the Holy Spirit has pulled me out of and shown me as far as like how to live my life.
Okay.
And so and I keep pouring over Exodus I think it's Exodus into Leviticus. I keep pouring over and over that, because I'm like, where does it say that he's like, why is he chosen, and why does God hate Esau? Because by his fruits, he's kind of like not a very nice person. Like not somebody I would pick. But I know that he doesn't pick perfect people. But I'm just saying, like, as I'm reading it and I'm going through all of this, and I'm seeing, remember I told you that my husband's family is Jacobites, and I'm going usurper, and he's red and hairy like Esau, and I'm seeing that could be an inversion. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm listening.
Sorry, I'm not trying to like take you off the path that you're on, but I'm just like, there's so many things coming to my brain right now, and I have so many questions.
No problem. So I wanna be able to address as many as I can with the allotted time that we have for the show.
Right.
So
go back to what you were doing though, because that was helping. I just wanted you to know, like, these are the things I'll bring up to you in the email too, because it's a lot.
Correct. No problem. And I understand that, and it's all good, right? Again, the history of what they call the Jacobites is a very interesting history, and that's something I can give you some good resources on, so you and him can actually read on that together. But what I was simply trying to do was, since you were exposed to our community, and you see that there is some apprehension with our community interfacing or discoursing or even fellowshipping with anybody that's outside of their ethnicity. There's a reason why they feel that way, and that's giving the history that people of my ethnicity have experienced here in America. So there's a huge mistrust issue, and I think that is the source of it. And when they go to the scriptures and find justification, it just in their mind, it tells them that it's good to interface and work with people of different ethnicity, but the goal is to focus and build on the demographic in this country that is at the bottom of the food chain, right? And we talking about statistically speaking, not just subjectively what you see, but statistically, what does statistics say that which people group that's in this country suffers the most from health ailments and have been discriminated against in regards to health, a lack of a political voice to the point where protest has to be done and raised on behalf of this community, whereas other ethnicities, they have lobbying rights and or lobbyists that help them to get certain laws passed and certain things done in the community. The fact that this people group also has not been given any reparations for damages that's been committed and atrocities committed against their ancestors, that they've been neglected from that has not been given to them. Promises were made and not kept. The amount
but that also applies to me because I'm Cherokee Indian, and I know that for a fact. My family's on the Dawes rolls, but they took my grandmother's land or whatever when she married outside of the tribe.
Yeah. So I'm not belittling that or minimizing that. I'm just trying to put a focus on the question you asked in regards to why our community, some people in our community can seem adversarial to somebody like you who is generally trying to inquire and figure out what's going on. And because of all these atrocities happening to this particular people group, particular people group is actually at the bottom of the food chain, poverty stricken, drug riddled, etc.
Like globally, not just in America.
So globally, correct. But I can only speak for the populace here because I'm part of them and I've seen it firsthand. So whenever we have been put in a condition like that, the emphasis is to speak and deal and work with that group who needs the most assistance to get them into an equitable playing field before we can begin to work, build, and do else with other groups of people, right? Not saying that all of us neglect doing that, no, but just saying that we know where the emphasis should be placed on, and we're able to find biblical justification to focus on building our community so that we're in a level field where we can then be the example, right, for all the other peoples. Now, if an issue is with Jacob and Jacob not being the true chosen son, then that will illegitimize any claims that anybody makes to be in Israel, right? And that's something that I do want to address, as you did bring it up, and I think that's important. Now, remember, Israel has been scattered across the four corners of the earth.
Right.
I'm not here to denounce anybody else's laying claim to be in Israel unless I have a dialogue with them, and on the further scrutiny, I see that their claim is untrue. But for the most part, I just try to focus on the case that's built for those of us who are here. We've been disfranchised from even considering the fact that we have lineage that goes back to Israel. My job is to restore that understanding through what I'm trying to walk you through, right? Through the migration routes, the oral traditions, primary sources. So once a case is made and people see that we do have a legitimate claim to be in Israel, right? Now, what does that mean? What does that entail? What obligations come with that knowledge now that we have it in 2022? And there's a lot that comes with that, right? And that's why
kids, I got to be honest. I think my family's home. It's going to get loud in my house.
That's okay. That's okay. As long as you stay for a little bit longer, I'm okay. Trust me, I got kids too, so I understand.
Okay.
So just to top it off, what I'm trying to show you on the screen is another primary source. This primary source is by Leo Africana.
Sorry, if I exit, I'm still here. I'm listening. It's just because I know it's going to get loud as soon as they walk in the door. My dogs are going to bark. Like if I exit, that's why. But keep talking because I'm here listening.
All right. So thank you, Melissa. I appreciate it. I'm gonna keep talking. But please reach out. You can always mute. You can stay on here and mute. It's fine. You can.
Yeah, I will. I'll stay as long as I can, but I just want to let you know, if I sign off, that's why I'm still here. I'm listening. I'm not going anywhere. Like, I'm really interested in what you're talking about.
No problem. I'll just hit mute real quick and we'll go through. Okay. So what I'm showing here is the source. Remember, I mentioned through Eldad Hadani and others that there were Jews that had migrated along the Nile River and settled along various areas in the Nile River from Sudan all the way to what we call Ethiopia today. And these were the 10 quote unquote lost tribes of Israel, right? And they settled there. They had communities there, etc. Now we have a resource from Leo Africanus going back to 1550 CE, where he speaks about the Jews being dispersed, and he talks about Abyssinia. Abyssinia is another name for a kingdom that was ruling in Ethiopia and spread from Ethiopia to surrounding areas. And they were in this region of what was called Abyssinia. And there's a mountain range going from there, making its way into what we call the Congo today, right? And what he's identifying is these Jews that was actually in this region that emigrated from East Africa, and they're in what we call Abyssinia, right? But there's a mountainous region that's connecting the two where these Jews are inhabiting, right? So let me go ahead and give you the source so you can kind of see where that's coming from. All right, so where we at? Let me jump back to it right here. So it says the Jews have been dispersed by God throughout the whole world to confirm us in the holy faith, entered into Ethiopia and the Queen of Seba's days in company of a son that Solomon had by her to that number. So he's talking about a legend that King Solomon and Queen Sheba had a child, and that child left from Israel when Queen Sheba encountered Solomon and was brought all the way down to Ethiopia. And then there was, they had other descendants from there. And then it says of 12,000, and there multiplied their generation exceedingly, in that they not only filled Abyssinia, but spread themselves likewise over the neighbors' provinces, so that at this day all the Assyrians affirm that upon the Niles towards the west there inhabiteth a most populous nation of the Jewish stock under a mighty king, and some of our modern cosmographers set down a province in those quarters, which they call the land of the Hebrews, placed as it were under the equinoctial and certain unknown mountains between the confines of Abyssinia and the Congo. So these Leo Africanus is a traveler, historian, etc. So he is documenting in his work that he has acknowledged, and in his mind, it was based on a legend, which I would come to say I don't subscribe to that legend at all. However, that was one of many legends that was going around at that day to try and explain how these Jews ended up in Abyssinia, which we know as a kingdom in Ethiopia, and inhabited from Abyssinia along a mountainous range that continued into the Congo region. Let me go back to this map real quick. All right, I want you to see this map real quick so we can kind of see what we're talking about. So again, we can follow what's being said. All right, so let me jump into this map, this Google Maps real quick. I'm going to show you the region that he's speaking about so we can see it. All right, let me share the screen. All right. All right, so the Nile River, just so we can, let me just zoom in. So the Nile River comes along here, comes all the way down, all the way down till we get to Lake Victoria, which is really the source of it, right? So this is Ethiopia. This is the Abyssinian, what we say kingdom was here in Ethiopia. So it also touched South Sudan, parts of Somalia, North Kenya, etc. So in this region, there were Jews here, and Jews were here into the mountainous regions that go into the region of what we call the Congo, which is right here, right? So they inhabited the mountainous areas and the surrounding areas from what we would call Ethiopia all the way into this region, because Eldad Hadani had noticed these individuals along this Nile all the way to Ethiopia, and then he's coming along and confirming that they lived from Ethiopia all the way into the Congo, right? So again, we see this wave of Jews in this region. He's attributing the Jews that was in Ethiopia to a legend about King Solomon, and again, that was a legend that can't be validated. That's an important legend for people who believe in King Haile Selassie, etc. But that's another conversation altogether. He's just saying, man, this is one of the ways that we learn how these Jews got there. But today, in this time, 1550 CE, They lived along that range. Okay. So I'm going to give you maybe about 2-3 other sources. I have a lot, but again, for me to give all 30 something sources I don't really have the time to do that. But I just want to show you these different regions where these Jews were acknowledged that lived in Africa and had migrated all the way to these regions in which we will call the west central part of Africa, that the slave trade took place. Here's another source so you can see, and this actually goes back to my mother's side of the family, right? Very interestingly enough. And again, family, if you want to see all these sources, they're on Patreon, www.patreon.com/DivineProspect. You can see all of these sources and more, okay? So this one, it talks about African slaves in the Caribbean islands informed Christian missionary Christian Oldendorf about Black Jews in Loango in 1767. Now, I just need you to understand where Loango is at. This is all connected to the other 2 sources that I shared with you, so you can kind of see this migration route, right? So Loango is right over here. This is the Congo, right? Loango would be on this region right here, this coast of West Africa. And this coast of West Africa is where slave ports was at, and slaves was taken from here and brought over to the Americas, okay? So we're talking about Jews that came, that left during a period of time during the civil war between the northern and southern tribes, during the siege of the Assyrians, which I have another source for, during the siege of the Babylonians, which I have another source for, during the siege of the temple in 70 AD, which I have another source for, and they continuously migrated down here. Some went the South Saharan route, which goes from Sudan, we say Sudan, into Chad, from Chad to Niger, into Nigeria, and then spread from Nigeria, migrated all the way to Ghana, and then some made their way past Burkina Faso all the way to Guinea, and from Guinea all the way up to Gambia and Senegal. So there's Jews that migrate into all these regions here. There were Sephardic Jews that came from Portugal, or in Spain, which is called the Iberian Peninsula, that were scattered from there through persecution in 1492. And they escaped from there and they went into northern Africa. And some of them came over here to various islands, the Canary Islands over here to the north. And some went even further to Cape Verde, into these islands over here. And then some settled over here into the Senegal, Gambia, Guinea, all the way down to Liberia. All right. You had this whole coast right here that had these Sephardic Jews. And these Jews also came over to Loango as well in this region right here. So let's see the testimony given to Christian Oldendorf in regards to the Jews that was in those regions, told to him by slaves that came from that region. So this is a non-biased source that he's getting this information from. And again, Tudor Parfit, which is a expert in African Jewry, he wrote a paper on this and he acknowledges these sources, right? And he has a bias against people who claim to be Jews today in Africa. However, he's unbiased when it comes towards historical facts, right? So let's read the rest of that so we can see this, because this is extremely important, right? Let me pull it up real quick. And when we read this, it says, according to the same Negro, there are Black Jews in Loango who observe the Sabbath so strictly that they do not utter one word on that day. They live dispersed about and engaged in trade. Even though they are completely similar to the other Jews in their outward appearance, they are so despised by them that they will not eat with them. They have their own burial ground, which is located far from the dwellings of the Negroes. Their graves are of masonry, and figures of snakes, lizards, and the like are painted on them by those who bury the body. This appears ridiculous to the Negroes. Since such paintings are so dissimilar to Jewish practices, the assumption is perhaps not improbable that the writing or the letters on the Jewish graves appeared to the Negroes to be of pictures of snakes, lizards, and so forth. So pretty much what this is saying is some of these Jews were probably written in a pictographic script, and it was not identifiable by the local African tribes that they lived amongst. So they thought that they were just like snakes, lizards, and other types of figures and animals. But it may have been a misconception of their writing system that they were utilizing at the time, right? But nonetheless, that migration we see from the Nile, from Egypt, all the way to Ethiopia, across that mountainous region throughout the Congo, making their way all the way into Loango. So this is the migration route in which they followed.
That doesn't like make you go, wait, their graves are Masonic and snakes and lizards? Because I look at the Jewish ones too, and I'm like, you guys and all your weird symbols, like.
No, so the person who's speaking about this, right, Christian Oldendorf, he is a brother from the Moravian Brotherhood, right? And the Moravian Brotherhood was the Dutch group or sect of Christianity amongst the Dutch brethren that had property in those Caribbean islands, right? Because the Dutch had conquered that region first before it was taken over by the Spanish and Portuguese and other groups, right? Well, Portuguese first and then the Dutch. So when the way he's speaking, when he says masonry, they're not talking about speculative and
talking about actual masonry, like with
like they're really brick builders. Yeah. So they actually, so their graves of masonry, meaning that the way they built it was probably of brick and mortar and other things that they used to build their graves, and then they made paintings on it, right? And this is what he's saying, that he's hearing from an African Negro who was a slave and on that island, is telling him this, and he's going to reinterpret and say, oh, you know what the slave is telling me, the slave is probably misinterpreting, and it's probably just Jewish letters or writings that those Negroes, and when he says Negroes, he's referring to those African tribes, are unfamiliar with. That's why they call it snakes, lizards, and so forth. This is what he's saying, okay? And this is called The History of the Mission of the Evangelical Brethren of the Caribbean Islands of St. Thomas, St. Croix, and St. John by Christian Oldendorf. My mother's side of the family is from Totola and also from St. Thomas and St. John, okay? So I am deeply entrenched and familiar with the history of the Dutch, as well as the Sephardic Jews and the African tribes that came from West Africa, and the argument that's made that some of them are these Black Jewish groups, right? That was identified by Christian Oldendorf, and they are a mixture of those groups and the Sephardic Jews that landed and settled on those U.S. Virgin Islands, okay? So this is, now we have one migration route with primary sources, right, from people who encountered it themselves, who did what we call quantitative research, right, and qualitative research in order to determine these finds that they're hearing. And then we have somebody who's able to attest, who's a traveler, historian, is able to attest where they was at. Eldad Hadani, which is the Jew who sometimes of mythical proportions, other stories and stuff is mentioned about him, but the record of him identifying these Jews in East Africa has been solid and is accepted as the consensus. So now we see this migration route where these Jews are going, these Black Jews are going, and they're going in places. In Luango, you had the Vili peoples, which was a African tribe that did slave raiding, and then they went into get the people groups who were foreign amongst them and give them up first as slaves to the Europeans, and then later go into the hinterlands, have battles, and get other slaves or prisoners of war and bring them into captivity and hand them over to Europeans for trade. But remember, the first thing they do is get rid of the foreigners who live amongst them. And if there was Black Jews that live amongst those groups, they would have been the first to go, according to the slave raiding habits. And you can look that up in a book that I can show shortly about the Vili tribes, amongst other tribes, and their slave raiding practices, all right, which is extremely important. Matter of fact, let me give you a source on that so that you can see how these techniques work, because a lot of people don't understand the slave trade and how slaves were sourced. And if they did understand that, then again, this helps the argument that we make that these foreign groups that lived amongst them, being Black Jews, were actually sourced first and then handed over to Europeans for trade, right? So I'm gonna show you this real quick. So you can kind of see what these techniques look like. Let me see. In fact, let me just keep here. All right, let me see if I can pull it up. Let me zoom out. All right, so let's see. Let me go down. Let's see. Let's go to slave raids. Slave raid. Where are you at, slave raid? Let's do this.
I guess what I'm like,
Sure.
one thing that just like keeps coming back to me is Galatians. Like it says, it doesn't matter. It's spiritual adoption. You're grafted in. So why are people
so hung up on being Jews?
Yeah, why?
because there's an obligation that comes with that identity.
And
that
then
obligation comes with a responsibility.
And I told you I was like looking into my lineage. I know that there's Cherokee roots. I know there's German roots. I know there's Italian roots, and I know there's Welsh roots. I know our surnames, so I could go with that. And all of my surnames, like, they go back to the same areas you're talking about at some point in time on both sides of my family. But like, again, only they're all dead. Or scattered or something. I'm actually first generation here. So technically, my mom was born in Italy, but my grandmother married an American soldier after World War II.
What about your dad's side of the family?
My dad's side, my great grandma or great grandma was Cherokee Indian and married somebody who wasn't. So when she moved off of the land, they told her that she lost her inheritance, basically. And then I know my grandmother, when she married my grandpa, was basically disowned by her German family because she married like a half-breed, because my grandpa is Cherokee and German. So like they didn't like her because she betrayed the German side by marrying somebody that was mixed. It's strange. Like, that's what I'm saying. It's so weird, but I don't understand why we're all so hung up on it when we know that it's a spiritual adoption. But then I'm not saying you're wrong or I'm right. That's not what I'm just looking for truth. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you. And there is an obligation, like I said, and a great responsibility to those who are ethnically Jews. And they have a responsibility according to the scriptures. It's still there, and that responsibility has never dissipated. The mission of the gospel was designed to go to the tribes of Israel. However, through the obedience of some of them, it allowed Gentiles to cleave. And this is what Paul is speaking about when he talks about it in Romans chapter 11. But he also mentions in Romans 3 what advantage is of it to be a Jew. He said, much in every way, for they were entrusted to be, the very oracles of God. Oracles meaning logos or logon, which means the word, right? So they were given the word to dispense, preach, or share it amongst the nations. And that is a very big responsibility that those who identify Jews have, is to distribute the word that was delivered by the Most High through the mouths of the prophets, and to teach the nations a standard of holiness to follow, right? That was their obligation, and that standard has not dissipated. The Israelites, who we will call today the apostles of Jesus, even Jesus himself, all of them were ethnically Jews, and all of them were commissioned to teach the gospel, spread the gospel, right? And that's who was sanctioned initially to do that act, right? And again, that's going according to what the law.
When you get to Galatians and all that, it says you're neither Jew nor Greek, you're neither male or female, like you're adopted.
Yeah, well, what that means is that everybody will be exposed to the gospel and have an opportunity to cleave unto that message of repentance, to return back to the Most High, right, and get salvation. So it doesn't matter who you are, right? Because there used to be class systems established where women were separate from men, slaves were separate from those who were free, etc. So Paul's talking about what he was witnessing within the Roman Empire. Okay, he was well traveled during that time. He was in the Roman Empire, and these are things he would have been accustomed to. Matter of fact, a runaway slave came to him, Philemon, and he had to speak to, Onanias, and he had to speak to Philemon, which was his slave master, and tell the slave master, please receive him back. Anything that he is owed, because he has left his station, I will pay back, etc. So these are things that he experienced firsthand, slavery, firsthand in the Roman Empire, right? So when he's given this message, he's given a message of hope to anybody, despite what your class or your status is. You will be exposed to the gospel, and you have an opportunity to cleave unto it when you hear the message, right? But the message had a particular purpose, and the apostles who were previously disciples understood who that message was supposed to go to when they were scattered. They knew who exactly to go to. And then we see who then gives that message outside of those groups, right? In Acts chapter 11, we see that. But before I get there, I just want to close off on this real quick. I'm going to touch on that, and then I'll close off, and then we can always have a follow-up another time.
Yeah, I'll email you too.
Yeah, no problem. And then, you know, you can set up a call, we could chat, whatever the case may be. But I want to show you something real quick, because I'm trying to pull it up here. I just have so many sources, so much to go through. And I wish we was going to talk about this today. I would have definitely had all of this on deck to share. But the source that I'm trying to look for, if I can find it, is showing you what the slave trading practices were of the native African tribes when dealing with foreigners who lived amongst them, right? And another group of foreigners that we see that lived amongst these African tribes was in the region of what we call Mandinga land. Let me share that with you real quick so you can see that.
Well, like, that's another thing. Nobody wants to talk about it, but white people were enslaved too. Like, it wasn't just.
You had the Barbary Coast slavery, right? Where you had Moors and North Africans who were enslaving Europeans, so much so that Europeans fled inland and away from the coastal regions because pirates and other groups were kidnapping them and putting them into slavery, right? And then you had slavery of other groups of peoples in different societies in different time periods, right? So, I mean, that's something that should not be neglected, overlooked, or glossed over. However, if we're going to be granular to the subject matter at hand and focusing on one particular demographic, just for the sake of this conversation, I'm just trying to point out why people in my community make a claim to identify with Israel, right? As far as that being their ancestral lineage. And that's based on the preponderance of evidence that exists that help to substantiate that claim, right? And then once I finish giving you a couple of sources to kind of solidify that, then I'm going to answer your question about Jacob being chosen. And then number two, now that Israel was on the scene, before and after they were, you know, kicked out the land, etc., what is their responsibility? What is so important about them? Why does the Most High deal with them? Why is he using them as the impetus to drive this gospel across the four corners of the earth, etc.? Because just so you know, Paul cannot denounce being an ethnic Jew. He was a Jew from the tribe of Benjamin, right? And he makes this very clear. Also, we see in Acts chapter 21, where Paul encounters James and a couple of other Jews who keep the law and accept Yeshua as the Messiah. They heard a rumor that Paul was teaching the Jews to forsake the law of Moses. So James says, hey, we got to do something about this because they're going to think that this is true if we don't say something. So they told Paul to go with a couple other brothers and to pay for their Nazirite vows to be commenced at the temple. And Paul goes and he does it to show that he lives in the law. Paul still kept the law, even though he was writing letters to the Galatians. He never forsook the law, right? He was dealing with people, from my perspective, who was outside of the law, which would be Gentiles, who he was dealing with in these regions, because there's a purpose for the Gentiles when it comes to quote unquote salvation amongst the Jews. They have a role.
When you're talking about Nazarites, that's another thing I brought up in the Hebrew Israelite camp is Lamentations 4:7.
Okay.
It says they're whiter than milk, like ruddier than rubies, and their countenance was of a sapphire.
Yeah.
And then it goes on to say that their faces were black, like, I forget. It's like it could literally go either way. Like the white people are like Lamentations 4:7, and the black people are like, yeah, but Lamentations 4:8, and I'm like,
so that's why I'm gonna be honest with you. That's why I don't make claims of skin color from passages that are not narratives. So
I don't get it.
Yeah, when you're dealing with ancient Near Eastern literature, there are different categories that utilizes different literary devices, right? Which are techniques designed to convey information from the author to the audience, right? Some of those are written in a poetic style. Lamentations is not a pure narrative. It has some narrative elements, but the way you know, based on how it's formatted, anytime you go into a critical edition Bible, in this case, I'm using the ESV, and you see how the stanzas are structured this way, right? We see one is structured like this, two is structured like this, as opposed to if I go to the book of Exodus, chapter 1, and you see how it's going across like a paragraph, this is telling you this is a narrative, right?
Well,
So
you're
this
looking
is
at the English Standard Version. Why don't you use like a King James Version, or like why is
well, the reason why I use the English Standard Version is because the English Standard Version is more updated in regards to the modern English language we use
there it
today.
goes.
It's okay. Modern
Okay.
English language that we use today, number one. Number two, it is a critical edition Bible, which means it gives footnotes to different things that are identified in the text to be textual variants, to be roughly translated one way, but the original language says something else, etc. And it's more updated in regards to proper grammar that matches the original language, and tries to be as what we will call more formal in its translation, right? So that's why I use the ESV. I only use the KJV when talking to other brothers and sisters who use the KJV. It is a very dated translation. There is some problems in some areas with it, and I've gone over this on the channel before. It's not to say it's a bad translation, not at all. It's very poetic in the way that it's styled, from the time of early modern English is where it comes from. However, a lot of that is not colloquial language that we use today. So a lot of times it creates this barrier of understanding for people who don't speak like that today, right? And don't understand some of the usage of words and phrases that was used during that time period about 400 years ago, as opposed to what we are exposed to today. So that's why I use the ESV amongst others. But I also go back to the original text as well, whether that's Greek, Hebrew, or Aramaic. Sometimes a Syriac, and I pull out or break down that language as well to see if a translation holds up to what's there, or if it's something that is lost in the translation, right? And sometimes that's going to be because these are two totally different languages. English and Hebrew, Aramaic, two totally different languages. However, Greek and English does come from the Indo-European language family. However, Greek is a different offshoot than English, which comes from West Germanic tribes and their language, and that goes back a little further. So that's going into language, but ultimately I use the ESV because it's easier to read. It has
the Germanic stuff goes back to the Caucasus Mountains, right?
Or
you're talking about like Yiddish and all that?
Well, I'm not gonna say Caucasus Mountains in the area of Georgia, modern day Georgia today. A lot of that follow the R haplogroup. So R1 haplogroup, R1A, R1B. The migration of those groups from that region of Georgia into what we call modern Europe today. Those people groups, right? So it follows those people groups. That language follows those people groups. So if you ever do a research on haplogroup R1, A, and B, you'll see that those are the people groups that brought that language into Europe. Previously, before that, there was other people groups that was living there that was indigenous to that region. They were displaced by those groups. The Etruscans is one of the famous groups that we know of that have a language isolate that's different from the other groups that were around them. And they were one of the indigenous groups that lived in what we call Europe today that was displaced by the current people groups that exist there now, right? Sort of similar to what we see here in the Americas. Native, what we call Native Americans, had a conglomerate of various tribes that existed here. They were indigenous to this land because it was here for thousands of years before the emigration of Europeans in this region, and they were displaced as well. So now they are extreme minority, and the descendants of the people groups who displaced their ancestors are the majority here in the Americas today, right? So in Exodus, what I'm trying to show is that when you see it formatted this way, this is a narrative. And when you go back to Lamentations and you see it formatted this way, it's more poetic, right? This is a lamentation. It's a style of writing. It's a woe that they're talking about, right? They're speaking exaggeratively. So there's a lot of analogous language in here, etc. So they're not talking about something that's literal, right?
I understand that. I'm a songwriter. I didn't tell you I'm a musician.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, so that means you can definitely.
I have a lot of like. What really trips me out, to be honest with you, because I'll write stuff and then I'll read it in the Bible and I'm like, oh my gosh, like it actually creeps me out sometimes because I'm thinking I'm just writing some poem and then singing some song and I'm like, I never even knew that was in the Bible.
Yeah. So if you
part
look
of it
here,
too.
yeah. So if you look here, you see it says her princes were purer than snow, whiter than milk. Their bodies were more ruddy than coral. Their beauty of their form was like sapphire. Now their face is blacker than soot. They are not recognized in the streets. Their skin has shriveled on their bones and has become as dry wood. So what he is mentioning here is that they had a state here where they were pure in nature, and that's why they're related to milk and snow. Not that they were literally pure. How can you be pure in snow? You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, they're saying that because when snow first lands on the ground, it's pure, comes straight from a source that's untainted, right? And when they say whiter than milk, again, they're also referring to that pureness, right? Because that goes back to the undergarments that the priests would wear, and those undergarments would be made of linen, right? And that would be considered set apart, or what we would call pure or holy, right? And it says their bodies were more ruddy than coral, and the beauty of their form was like sapphire. So coral and sapphire were items that was highly prized and precious during that time period. So what they're doing is they're likening their nobility to all of these excellent features, but now that they're in captivity in Babylon, now they have transitioned to what they say blacker than soot, right? Which is like the dirt that accumulates over time when you're walking on the ground, right? And they're not recognized in the streets. Their skin has shriveled on their bones, has become as dry wood. So it's saying that this is the deprivative state that they entered going into captivity, that they actually left this first estate and now they entered into this unusual state that was not intended for them. And this is all based on their disobedience, right? So again, I never use this to say, oh, look, they were white, or oh, look, they were black, because when you go back and you actually look at the text, at least those passages that people use to claim color is not there. However, that does not mean that these people who are writing this were not people of color. They were. And we have anthropological reports that actually have given us that. That's the consensus today in the realm of ancient Near Eastern anthropology, looking at the evolution of these people groups through their migration routes, settlement routes, etc. We have confirmation that these were people of color, right? And that's something that is the consensus today. In the past, maybe 300-400 years ago, based on racist anthropology that existed at that time by Blumenbach, who was one of the instruments responsible for pushing this racist theory using anthropology, mostly looking at craniums and skulls and trying to show that the Caucasus skull is more evolved than the Negroid skull and the Asiatic skull, and use that as a means for him to teach this racist anthropology, which was mixed in with some religion to show the superiority of those who have a lineage that goes back to the Caucasus Mountains, right? So nonetheless, this is just to show you this, why I don't use that. But I want to just complete what I was talking about first, just to show you a few more sources, again, just so you can see another area where the migration happened at, which would be Senegambia, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna show you that real quick, and then we're gonna top it off with one last recent paper by a expert, Tudor Parfit, and then Janice.
But like, how does the?
Go ahead.
I love listening to experts and everything, but at the same time, I'm like, why aren't we taking the scripture and going, okay, it says this, and if we look at a map, this is where this is, and if we look at this, like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but see, the Bible is not going to tell you where these Jews ended up in Africa. So I have to use sources outside the Bible in order to show you that, because that information is not specifically in the Bible, right? So that's why I'm venturing outside the Bible to kind of show you events that are mentioned in the Bible. Sources outside the Bible show you where these people groups have gone and where they've migrated to. So that way the claim that we make in regards to identify as Israelites can be validated based on these primary sources, right? That have to exist outside the Bible, because once we're able to show that, it then connects.
But you can't erase truth. You know, you can't erase it. Like, it's there.
Facts. So yeah. So let me finish up on this real quick, and then I really want to get to what you're saying about Jacob, because I think that's very important. And unfortunately, a lot of people have been miseducated on the Bible. What we try to do here is try to do our best to kind of correct that, because that has been the cause of a lot of people straying away from institutions that teach this information and have a healthy mistrust against what has been promulgated towards them or propagated towards them. So I definitely understand that. But let me just read this to you real quick so you can see, even as far as Senegambia, that you have Jews, Black Jews that existed there amongst the native people groups in that area. Again, showing from a primary source of somebody who witnessed it through a second party that they actually existed in that region, right? So here is another source right here. All right. And this source right here is called, from this book right here, it's called The Portuguese in West Africa, right? A documentary history, right? Edited by Malin Newitt. All right. This is from Cambridge Publishing. It says Black Jews discovered by Portuguese travelers among the Wolof peoples along the Senegal River in 1495 to 1518 CE. So look how early these dates
sold them into slavery, correct?
The Portuguese, yeah, definitely. Yeah. But this is before.
Because I didn't tell you, my husband's other side of his family are those people. The Portuguese.
Who's those people? The Portuguese. When you say those people, what you mean? Oh, okay.
No, I have the other half of my husband's family. Remember, I told you half of them's Jacobites. Well, then on the mother's side, they're Portuguese.
Okay, gotcha.
And they're major Roman Catholics.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, of course, because if you know the history about Spain and Portugal, they were slaves to the Roman Catholic Church for a long time, right? This is why all the lands they conquered on the west was given to them to conquer by the Roman Catholic Church, right? But just so you know, and I say this to be very honest and straightforward, we have the records for most of the major slave holding families, right? So it's not a secret anymore. 2022. A lot of this information is documented. We have it. Matter of fact, I think about 2-3 years ago, I mentioned about 12 of those family names. So I could go through any European nation and I can tell you who the major slave holding families are, the slave trading families are, the ships that they use, the funds that they use to trade those slaves, etc. And their descendants today who have benefited from those actions. Those are the ones that I have to beef with. Those are the ones I have to issue with, because those are the ones who should be the most sensitive to the information I'm sharing with you today, because they have benefited from something that their ancestors have done. They may not have done it themselves, but if they are beneficiary, the best thing to do if the money you received is blood money is to do what? It's to give it back. Yeah. And that restitution is part of Torah.
And we're seeing that. I cried when they gave Bruce's Beach back to everybody in Manhattan Beach. That was great. Like that family waited so long for that.
Now, also, speaking of Manhattan, are you familiar with the history of Central Park?
I'm talking about Manhattan Beach, California.
Yes,
there's a family, but no, I'm not. I don't know the East Coast very well. I've never been or anything.
Okay, no problem. Well, the reason why I brought that up is because that's another place where it had community of what we called liberated African Americans that lived in that region for extended period of time until that land was taken away from them. And New York had claimed that they were going to restore portions of that back to those people who it should rightfully be towards, and that has never happened. So when we do hear stories like the one you mentioned, it's far and few between, but there's a lot of restitution that needs to take place. And this is why there's a healthy mistrust that people of color have of people who look like the individuals who have oppressed their ancestors, right? It's not from a place of, oh, I just hate you. That's to hate you.
I don't believe that at all. You know what I mean? Like I've never personally been racist, so I don't understand it. Like I don't understand it. It's something I don't understand.
So now one technologies, you said Greek language has Hebrew Phoenician origins. It depends on which ones we're talking about, because Greece, the core elements of Greek language can go back to the Minoan script, Linear A and Linear B, and those precede the Hebrew language. So definitely research that, look into that. And I want you to go ahead and kind of look into that a little further. Okay.
That was actually a confirmation. I know I've been supposed to study the Phoenicians. I don't know why, but that was a confirmation for me. So
the Phoenicians have a very interesting history. They're the ones who's credited with creating the first alphabet that formed into the Grecian alphabet, that formed into the Latin alphabet, that formed into the alphabet that we use today, which goes back to the Latin script that we use to communicate today in English. And the Phoenicians were seafarers, right? And they dominated for X amount of period of time. We have a lot of artifacts from them, especially through sarcophagus of their kings in the early 10th century that we have from them, where we actually see some of those earliest scripts and the sarcophagi of their dead kings. And even some references that I mentioned earlier from the Rephaim peoples that you see in the Bible are mentioned on some of those sarcophagi, where some of the kings, human kings that died, wanted to have a death and a burial, just like one of these great Rephaim semi-divine entities, right, that they worshipped and looked up to, right? So here it says, this is from the Manuscripto de Valentin Fernandez. And let me go ahead and scroll down so you can read it. And it says, in this country and in Mandinga, there are Jews who are called the Gaul, and they are black like the people of the country. However, they do not have synagogues and do not practice the ceremonies of other Jews, which means they were Jews, but they had some distinct practices. They do not live with the other blacks. And when they say other blacks, they're referring to the native indigenous African tribes, but separate from them in their own villages. These Gaul are usually jesters and singers and play on vowels and cabocles. And because they do not dare to enter the villages, they take up a position behind the houses of the lords of the village. And at daybreak, they sing his praises until he orders them to be given a ration of millet, and then they go away. And when the Lord leaves his house, these Jews go in front of him singing and calling out their jests. If the Jews did not know these jests, and if they did not greet the Lord in this way, they would not be tolerated by the blacks. For so great is the ill will felt towards them that they are barred by the blacks and do not dare enter one of the houses except that of the Lord. And if they are found in the village, they are beaten with sticks. No Gaul, whether a Jew or a Jewess, may take water from a spring until everyone else has finished drawing water, and then the last person will give them water. Or if they live in a country where there is a lot of water, they have some spring of their own set apart, right? And again, this is from the Portuguese in West Africa, pages 74 and 77, that talk about these Jews who lived amongst the natives there, right? And what you'll see when you go into Mandinga land, in this region, right, in this area, you'll see that they were also involved in the slave trade. And guess one of the slave raiding practices they did? They gave up the foreigners that was amongst them. Who were some of the foreigners amongst them? The Jews.
Right.
And they gave them up to the slave traders and say, here you go. They gave them up first. They rarely ever gave up anybody from their own communities, maybe criminals, or maybe people who may be like invalids or stuff like that. But mostly it would be foreigners amongst them, or they would go and they would capture prisoners of wars, do skirmishes, and then they would use them to trade. Right. So they would very rarely trade their own people. Now, sometimes they would out of desperation, and we have accounts of that happening. But it wasn't as widespread as we thought it was previously before new data have come out that explains information on the slave trade, right? So that right there is the second to last source. And the last one is going to be a more modern source that speaks about this that I think is relevant because this is an expert in the field. What I gave you previously are firsthand accounts from people of the past who talk about Black Jews being in these regions, right? Now I'm going to give you somebody who's an expert in this field to see what they say about this. And again, this is not knowledge that is common. Like a lot of people don't know about this history, right? And it's unfortunate because if they did, then they would say, oh, okay, you know what? I guess when African Americans do make a claim, there may be some way to substantiate it. Maybe they're not just saying this and trying to have
But you said it yourself that not everyone is of those people. People came from all that look the same, but there's people from all walks of life here, and they might look like the Jews, but they're different. There's two different.
There's ways that you can get more meticulous, right? More detailed, and be able to see based on the data you receive from somebody if they actually do have a good argument, right, for being an Israelite, right? Because that term Jew is a misnomer, right? It's not really a good way to describe people who are really Israelites, right? But I want to show you this source because I think this help to kind of summarize everything real quick. Aside from those firsthand accounts, let me see if I can get this to you.
Thanks for bringing me on, because I mean I got a lot to study, but I appreciate it. It's like I have all these questions and they won't even let you talk about it. They're like, oh, you're white. And I'm like, I'm not even white. Look at me. I'm white-ish.
Yeah, I understand.
My teeth are white.
Yeah. I understand. And you know, it's just everybody is just not equipped to have conversations with people, and some people are, you know, and it's on both sides of the spectrum, right? So all right, so let me get this. This is from Tudor Parfit, and it's the diaspora, right? We're talking about the diaspora of the Jews. Let me see if I can get that source real quick. Let's see. Let's see, where is it at? Blackness in Israel. Yeah, I can't believe I can't find this source, man. Sorry
Okay,
about that.
maybe it's not meant to be, you know?
No, I mean, I do have a PowerPoint on this, but I don't want to reveal it yet because I have not shared it in a lecture format yet, so I'm not sharing it. What I'm doing, just pulling some excerpts from my Patreon, which if you're interested, like if we talk and you do like what we share on this ministry and you do want to support, I don't know if you're familiar with Patreon is, but we do have a Patreon, and on the Patreon, I provide a whole bunch of resources. I provide Bibles, a paid Bible software on there that you can get access to, audio Bibles on there, language. So if you're interested in learning Hebrew, Aramaic, or Greek, you have those resources on there. I have my blog posts that I write on there, videos that I do on there that you don't see on YouTube, that's open to the public, books that I have on there, like I'm referencing now, firsthand accounts, articles, academic articles, etc. I have tons of content, almost 800 posts of content of all types of information on a plethora of different subject matters, but the heaviest concentration is the ancient Near East and the Bible, right? Things relating to the Bible. And a lot of the content that's shared on there is either some great resources to help you to better study the Bible, or resources outside the Bible that either speak in conjunction with the Bible or actually speak in opposition to claims made by the Bible.
Right.
And the reason why I put that in, yeah, so some that support, some that don't support. But the reason why I put all that out there for my community is so they can look at things objectively and be able to address any claim that comes their way, right? Because if you're too biased,
you have to.
Yes,
and you can rightly divide the truth if you know the word. You can rightly divide it. It's not. And if you know the Holy Spirit and you know love, you know all that. Like that's not an issue.
Gotcha. So all right, so I'm gonna sum it up from there. Again, we can talk about this further. I give you more resources on those primary sources, but I think I made my point there just for now. Let's get into the Bible. We're going to deal with this notional claim about Jacob being the chosen son. We're going to see what the scripture says about it. And then from there, we can build off the conversation and kind of get the rest of your inquiries. I'm going to close out this session in maybe about another 15, 20 minutes, about 17 minutes, because we've been here a little longer than I intended. But we got 17 minutes. We're going to try to address this real quick. If you have a question in the midst of it, that's fine. But I want to show you what the Bible says about the chosen seed of Abraham, right? Because that was a promise that was given to Abraham about having a chosen seed, right? A child coming from him, right? All right, so let me go to Genesis chapter 12 is where that journey starts, right? Genesis chapter 12. All right, and here it is. All right, now Yahweh said to Abraham, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you, and I will make of you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those that bless you and curse those that curse you. And him who dishonors you, I will curse. And in you, all families of the earth shall be blessed. Right. So in you, they will be blessed. So the blessing of all the families on the earth comes from the seed of Abraham, according to what the text says in Genesis chapter 12. Right. This is what the Most High is saying to Abraham. Right. So that's the first important thing to note. Right. So as we're going through the history of Abraham and we're seeing what's going on, there's a separation between him and Lot. Right. And then we see another situation with him rescuing Lot. And then we get to Genesis 15, where he gets more granular in regards to his covenant with him. Right. So when we go down here, this is where he makes an actual physical covenant with the Most High. But then he says here, after these things, the word of the Lord came to Abraham in a vision. Fear not, Abraham, I am your shield. Your reward shall be very great. And Abraham said to him, O Lord God, what will you give me, for I continue childless, and the heir of my house is Eliezer of Damascus? Abram said, behold, you have given me no offspring, and a member of my household will be my heir. And behold, the word of the Lord came, so this man shall not be your heir, your very own son shall be your heir. Now remember, he says he's going to be blessed, and all nations of the earth are going to be blessed through his offspring, and it's going to come through one of his sons, Abraham's own sons from his own loins. Okay. Then it says, and he brought him outside and said, look towards heaven and the number of the stars, if you are able to number them. Then he says to him, so shall your offspring be. And he believed the Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh, and he counted it to him as righteousness. This is something that Paul plays off of, right? So here's the thing. We see now the promise is given in chapter 12. It's reiterated in chapter 15 that it will come through his loins, through his son. Here we actually see the sacrifice that's made. This right here is a form of a deity covenant with a lesser entity, which is people. He told him to sacrifice the heifer, cut it in half, split it apart. And then when the sun had gone down and was dark, behold, a smoking fire pot and a flaming torch passed through the pieces. Whenever a deity did that, when somebody cut a heifer in half or sacrifice in half, that means the deity is sealing the covenant or the agreement that he made with the lesser, right? This is something interesting to notate. Stuff written in the text is not there by accident. It actually does have a purpose. And this is something a lot of people tend to gloss over because they really don't understand what that means, right? So we see 15, right? He's giving him more and more information about that chosen son. Now look at this, right? Chapter 16. So now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children. She had a female Egyptian servant whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said to Abram, behold, now the Lord has prevented me from bearing children. Go into my servant. It may be that I shall obtain children by her. And Abram listened to the voice of Sarah. So he went into Hagar, verse 4, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, she looked with contempt on her mistress. All right. So when all of this occurred, this gave birth to Ishmael. Ishmael is not the chosen son, because this was an act that was committed by both Sarah, Hagar, and Abraham. So this is not the chosen seed, the one that he said that all nations will be blessed through your offspring. This is not it, okay? In Genesis 17, the Most High tells Abraham to walk before him and be blameless, that he may make the covenant between him. And this is when you have the circumcision that occurs, right? And circumcision had to be done before he can actually give birth to a child. He can have a child. He had to be circumcised first. It was very interesting. Then he tells him, he who is 8 days old among you shall be circumcised. Every male throughout your generations, whether born in your house or bought with your money from any foreigner who is not of your offspring, both he who was born in your house and he who is bought with your money shall surely be circumcised, right? So here we go. You see this? Isaac's birth promised. And God said to Abraham, as for Sarah, your wife, you shall not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. I will bless her. Moreover, I will give you a son by her. Watch this. I will bless her, and she shall become nations. Kings of people shall come from her. And Abraham fell on his face and laughed. Yeah, through her, through Sarah, because it's making a distinction between Hagar and Sarah. That's why he's focusing now on Sarah, as opposed to what him and Sarah did with Hagar, right? Then it says, then Abraham fell on his face and laughed and said to himself, shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? Shall Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child? And Abraham said to God, oh, that Ishmael might live before you. God said, no, but Sarah, your wife, shall bear you a son, and you shall call his name Isaac. Watch this. I will establish my covenant with him, and as an everlasting covenant for his offspring after him. As for Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I will bless him and will make him fruitful and multiply him greatly. He shall father 12 princes, and I will make him into a great nation. But I will establish my covenant with Isaac, whom Sarah shall bear to you at this time next year. So now we see this chosen seed is through Isaac, who is the son of Abraham. Now, from Isaac, we get Jacob. Okay. Now, the question is Jacob chosen? Right? Is Jacob also part of that chosen seed? Well, we see
he's the heel grabber.
Yeah. So we see here in Genesis chapter 25, Abraham's death and his descendants, right? And it tells you, how old he was when he died. Then it says, these are the generations of Ishmael, Abraham's son, who Hagar, the Egyptian, Sarah's servants, bore to Abraham, and it goes on to the lineage of Ishmael, right? Then it goes into the birth of Esau and Jacob, which is the sons of Isaac. Now, if we go to a chapter prior, this is where Isaac and Rebekah meet. Now, if you go early in the life of Isaac, God also confirms to Isaac that through his seed, his offspring, that he would give birth to a son who would be the inheritance of the blessings that he promised to Abraham. And then now you're talking about the situation between Jacob and Esau, which happens here, right? So let's read a little bit of here, right here in verse 22. It says, the children struggled together within her, and she said, if it is thus, why is this happening to me? So she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, now, just so you know, very interestingly enough, Rebekah was able to inquire of the Most High without a man, without a priest. She was able to do it herself. Now, this is very unique. Some women were able to do this, and in her case, she was able to do it, right? And it's very interesting because prior to this, Rebekah, her family were worshiping other idols and other deities, right? But on coming to contact with Isaac, she had cleaved unto him and made Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh her God, right? And it says here in verse 23, and the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other. The older shall serve the younger. Now, who made this claim? Who's saying this? Is this God? Yeah. So if this is, look, if it's saying this, that means it's already prophesied which child should be the one in power and which one should be the one to serve, right? That's what it says right here. 2 nations of people, 2 nations should be divided within you. The one shall be stronger than the other, right? Then it says, when her days to give birth were completed, behold, there were twins in her womb. The first came out red, all his body like a hairy cloak. So they called his name Esau. Afterwards, his brother came out with his hand holding Esau's heel. So his name was called Jacob. Isaac was 66 years old when he bore them. I pray and hope I never have kids at that age. But anyway, so we saw that it says, and after his brother came out with his hand holding Esau's heel, so his name was called Jacob. So what does Jacob mean? Because now we got to get into definitions, what we call onomastics, which is the study of names, to try and find out why his name was called that, because eventually it was changed, right? So Yaakov, which means
deceiver, right?
Well, akeb is the root word it comes from, and that word means what? Heel, footprint, hind part, not deceiver. You see that?
Okay, but he's still the heel grabber.
Yeah, the heel grabber. Yeah, I mean, yeah. So remember, his brother was old. Esau was older than him, as he came out first, and Jacob.
Yeah, well, the older shall serve the younger. So Esau should serve Jacob. Correct?
So, yes. So now that we see, so now that we see what the name is, this term supplanter you get, right? When we say heel supplanter, compare with overreach, akab, in Genesis 27 and 36. So what they're doing is they're trying to show what we call cognate, where you have 2 words that are similar because they share a common root, right? So in Genesis 27 and 36 is really where you would get the understanding for this term for supplanter, 27 and 36. And it says, Esau said, is he not rightly named Jacob? For he has cheated me these 2 times. He took away my birthright. And behold, now he has taken away my blessing. Then he said, have you not reserved a blessing for me? So watch this. Akeb, that word akeb, that root word means heel. The reason why it has taken on this term for supplanter is because Esau attributed that to Jacob's name. Not because that's what his name really means. Esau gave that attribution to his name. Make sure you keep that in mind. And remember, it was his mother, Rebekah, that instructed Jacob on what to do.
And she said, let your sin be upon me.
So
and he was obedient.
Was that Jacob? Jacob didn't supplant anything. He was obedient.
No, he was obedient to his mom. He honored his mother.
And through that,
but he still went along with it.
He did. So what you gonna do? Disobey your mom? So let me show you something, right?
I mean, I would. If my mom was wrong, I would. But that's me.
Well, true. But in this time, how would he know his mom is wrong?
Because he's lying to his dad, dressing up as his brother and putting hair on his arms to trick his dad, thinking he's an Esau.
And what was the intention of that?
To get the blessing.
So remember,
because Rebecca wanted him to have the blessing.
Who's Esau's mother?
Rebecca.
So it's not like this is some other woman's child. Esau's her son, right? And then Jacob is another son. She preferred Jacob over Esau, and she believed, based on observing her children, that Jacob should be the one to get the blessing. But because of custom, it wouldn't happen the traditional fashion. So because a promise, the prophecy already came out in advance, who would be who, she was carrying it out. So what she used her son to do in manipulation was already allowed and permissive, so that something can come about, which is this blessing that Isaac bestows upon Jacob, right?
I can see that.
Yeah, so of course Esau would be mad, but guess what? Esau sold his birthright. Nobody made Esau do that. See, once you sell your birthright,
but where does it say he sold his birthright? Because everyone says he sold it for a bowl of soup, but I feel like his brother totally deceived him into that.
How? He was hungry.
Because he came in hungry from the field, like dying of starvation, and then he was like, "Give me your birthright." And he said to his brother, "What good will it be if I'm dead?"
That's fine. Hey, he could still resist it. He could have said, "Nah, I'm not giving you nothing." He could have did that too, right?
Was he really dying though? Like, and if he was, like, who denies their brother or sister food when they're dying because they want to keep them?
Esau was just out in the field hunting. There's no way he could have been dying. He was hungry, right? So right here, we're going to read it right here, right? When Isaac was old and his eyes were dim so that he could not see, he called Esau, his oldest son, and said to him, "My son." And he answered, "Here I am. Behold, I am old. I do not know the day of my death. Now then, take your weapons, your quiver and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me." You see this? This man could not be on his deathbed if he had enough strength to hunt. "And prepare for me delicious food, such as I love, and bring it to me to eat."
Wait, I'm talking about a different part. You're talking about when he goes out,
part, right?
When he comes back in and his brother says.
All right, so let's go back. My bad. Okay, let's go back.
Sorry.
Right here, verse 25, verse 29. Let me go into this first, right? That's connected to that, by the way. But let's go back. The reason why this is important is because this is the prelude to what we're about to see. You know, when everybody says all this stuff about Jacob, let's read this part first. Verse 29. Once when Jacob was cooking stew, Esau came in from the field and he was exhausted. And Esau said to Jacob, "Let me eat some of that red stew, for I am exhausted." Therefore his name was called Edom. Jacob said, "Sell me your birthright now." Esau said, "I'm about to die. Of what use is a birthright to me?" Now you got to remember,
like you said, he's about to die.
Yeah. I mean, he's exaggerating. Biologically speaking, do you know how long it takes for the human body to wither away and die without lack of food?
Yeah, a while, but that's
not. Yeah. Well, hold on.
Yes. Yeah, I do know, but I'm over here like that still doesn't mean he wasn't starving, and like who knows. When people are hungry, they do crazy things. Like,
correct.
I feel like his brother took him at a vulnerable moment and was like, "Hey, give me this." And he's like, "Whatever, just give me the soup."
Okay, that person could be at a vulnerable moment, but Esau could have easily said no. He could have went to his mom and got something to eat. You know why he went to his brother? Because he likes that stew that his brother makes. That's why. He could have went to his mom.
Where does it say that in the Bible?
You said what?
Where does it say that in scripture?
Say what is scripture?
You're not supposed to add to it or take it away. It doesn't say that add to it or take away from it. It does not say in there that he preferred his brother's soup. It says that he told his brother, "Dude, I'm about to die. Give me the soup." And his brother's like, "Give me your birthright and I'll give you the soup." I have 4 sisters. There's no way I would treat any of my sisters that way. There's no way, as much as my older sister and I fought when we were kids, that I would treat her that way. I wouldn't do that. So I can't fathom that, because I know that's wrong. That's deception. I know dressing up as your brother and putting fur on your arms and lying to your dying dad is also wrong. That's wrong. No matter how you cut it, that's wrong.
Okay.
Then you take it further, and it says he puts his head, like he on his way to Laban's house, he stops in Bethel or something like that, and he uses the altar for a pillow for his head. Then you take that further, and it says, like I was telling you about the brothers, how Dinah looks like she shacks up with a guy she's not supposed to, and he seems to be in love with her. People are like, oh, he raped her. And I'm like, where does it say that? I never saw that. I didn't say she slept with him. And they said, don't deal with our sister like a harlot, but like she slept with him, and he went out and got him, and everyone in his family and everybody in his community went and got circumcised so that he could marry this girl because he was in love with her. He spoke kindly to her. Rapists don't speak kindly to people. They just take them. But that's not what he did. He went out and cut his penis off as a grown man. Do you know what kind of commitment that is? And they all did it. And then Jacob's sons went and killed all of them when they were down. How is that right? I know the Most High because I know Jesus, and I know that Jesus would not stand for any of that. So I keep asking these questions and no one can answer them because it's common sense to me that that's wrong.
Okay. So let me answer that first proposition you made in regards to, for me to show you what was Esau's name called?
Edom, which I know he's the father of the Edomites. The Bible says that. I get it.
But why was his name called Edom?
He's red and hairy.
No.
Because of the soup.
Yes. So the reason why it's attributed to him is because typically when somebody's name refers to something that they possess, something that they desire, typically they take on that same name, right? So the red stew that he's asking about, let me eat some of that red stew for I'm exhausted, is the thing that is stigmatized with Esau, and therefore his name is changed to Edom, right? So this was something that he requested from his brother Jacob. So if me saying that was something that Jacob made that he desired, that he liked, I'll refrain from that, right? Even though I can justify that. But if we continue to read in verse 31, it says, Jacob said, sell me your birthright now. Remember, Jacob has already made food for himself. He's given up his food to his brother, who his brother's saying that he is exhausted. So he's doing it in exchange for something. Now, if you are saying, according to your moral worldview, moral compass that you have today, that, oh, I would never do that. Yes, that's you. You know, some people say, yeah, I would do that given the circumstance. If you understand the circumstance of what was going on, right? And in the circumstances here, what was going on, you could say, oh, look, it looks like Jacob was taking advantage of Esau. Well, Esau very well could have been taking advantage of Jacob. How do we know that meal that he had was not Jacob's only meal that he made for the day? When you study the ancient Near East, they didn't have grocery stores. They didn't have Uber Eats. They didn't have DoorDash, right? They didn't have microwaves. They had to labor intensively for hours in order to prepare a meal. So this is what Jacob did, labored for hours while his brother is out in the field. He's laboring, making food. He made his meal and he's like, oh, you want my food? Okay, well, if I'm going to give you my food, I want something in exchange from that. What about the selfishness of Esau to demand food from his brother?
I see that.
I'm saying Esau could have gotten it from other way. They had servants. He had a mother. He could have went to his mom. Mom, can you make me some food? Maybe because he knew he wasn't his mom's favorite, she probably would poison him, something like that. He's like, he could have said, Mom, give me some food. He could have went to a servant, asked one of his servants to give him some food. They had servants. But again, because Jacob did a labor-intensive task of making food, he says, if I'm gonna do all this work and just give you my food, give me something in exchange. How bad do you really want this food for me to go without eating? To give it to you. And he's like, give me your birthright. And he says, well, I'm about to die. Of what use is a birthright?
But it doesn't say that. You're just reading into it. It doesn't say that.
He doesn't say what?
It doesn't say that he took his brother's only food for the day. He doesn't say that he persecuted his brother in any way. It just says that he came in from the field and said, give me your soup.
What I'm saying,
and he said, okay, sell me your birthright.
You said, give me your soup. So the question would be, how do you know that this is not Jacob's only meal for the day?
Why are we asking these silly questions? It's precept upon precept. Well, if there are two nations in the womb, one's the heel grabber. His name means heel grabber. You see him usurp his brother's blessing. You see him lie to his father. You see him murder, or you see his sons, the fruit of his loins, murder their sister's boyfriend, whatever. Like, I'm only there. Okay, I can't get past that point because precept upon precept, going back to seed of the serpent striking the heel and seed of the woman crushing the crown. That looks like the same thing to me.
Are you talking about murdering a rapist? That's what you said?
No, I didn't say that he was a rapist. I said boyfriend.
No. Okay, so they took care of him.
I don't mean to be rude, but it's midnight. I gotta get off this chat.
No problem. No problem.
I wanna email you about this because this is way too long of a conversation to be getting into at midnight right now. To be honest with you, I've been on this chat for 3 hours. My husband just got home. My kids already went to bed, so
no problem.
And also, I'm getting emotional about it because I'm frustrated, and I'm not frustrated at you. I'm just like, you're going off on these rabbit trails and not answering with scripture, edifying me with scripture. You're going, well, how do you know that wasn't his last meal for the day? I'm like, yeah, okay, we can ask these questions, but that's speculation. That's not what the word says. That's speculation.
Now, what I want to just end off with you on this, Melissa, and again, I understand your current disposition, and again, I'm not taking it personal.
Okay, and I'm just trying not to be reactive and emotional. So.
I'm saying one thing that you got to be aware of when how we study the Bible here, we learn about the culture of the Bible. So we don't just read what the text is saying.
Well, hermeneutics are important. You should know those things.
Well, yeah. So again, what I just applied was hermeneutics, right? About red stew. How is red stew made? What does it consist of? How much labor does it take for you to create it? And how much portion can you make by one person yourself doing that labor-intensive task? So what I'm saying is I'm applying, you just mentioned hermeneutics. One thing about hermeneutics is the cultural principle. How does understanding the culture weigh in on what we're reading in the passage, right? So that's what I was providing, that additional insight. And if you don't want to take my word for it, I have tons of other sources. Here's one good one right here that I showed earlier by John H. Walton. This is called the Cultural Background Study Bible, where it goes into detail about the things that I am mentioning by scholars who are Trinitarian Christians, Orthodox Christians, and they are sharing that information as well, so we can understand the cultural context behind what is taking place in the passage. That's the only reason.
I guess like part of my reservation with this is that there's a lot of commentary and not a lot of scripture supporting scripture, and applying hermeneutics with that. You know what I mean?
So there is scripture to support scripture, and one of them that I stated was his name being changed to Edom, right? And why he got that attribution, right? You're not going to get a lot of scripture.
And I never noticed that before, so I will study that just so you know.
Sure. No problem. But let me do this. Let me let you go so I can close out the show.
Thank you.
No problem. I just want to say thank you for being brave enough to come here. I was making sure I was on my best behavior because sometimes the conversation can get pretty deep, and sometimes do the conversation, some people can get their feathers ruffled, etc. That's not my intention. My intention is just to deliver the truth as I have received it, so that once people understand what is being shared, they have an obligation to do something with that knowledge. I appreciate you listening to the history that I share with you in regards to those migration route of Jews to West and Central Africa, who then were picked up and brought into the transatlantic slave trade. I didn't get to really show the rest of that evidence, but we could talk about that one-on-one.
But that's okay, because even the rabbit trail you gave me, that's a lot. That's a lot to study. Like, that's not just something you can learn in one day.
Correct. It takes time.
I'm not just listening to you. Like, I genuinely want to know. I genuinely want to look into this stuff.
Yep.
And I definitely want to continue this conversation of Esau. Sure. I'm just tired. My husband's home. My kids went to bed. I'm like, I gotta go. I gotta get off of here.
No problem.
This is a lot. It's a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I'm just gonna end up with this. So thank you for listening to that.
Appreciate you, brother.
For engaging into this conversation, dealing with Jacob and Esau. My attempt to address as much as I could in a short period of time your concerns in regards to Jacob and Israel and why Israel's chosen, etc. We'll continue that another time. Again, if you want to come back on here at a future time, I have no problem with that. And again, we're more than happy to share the information with you. Again, it's gonna be frustrating, especially when you have to learn what a person's technique is when they study the text to understand why they're taking the approach that they're taking. So thank you for your time.
Well, and I'm testing all the spirits too. You know what I mean? Like, we're called to do that. So, but I appreciate you. I appreciate your patience with me, and don't think because I'm like I'm not. I've asked this question so many times and I get the same answers, which is never scriptural. It's always some, well, it could be this, it could be that. It's like, but that, it doesn't say that. And precept upon precept, these are the dots I'm connecting. And maybe it's because I haven't read past that yet, but I can't get past it because I'm like, I can't move past this. Like there's something there that I'm missing. Maybe it does have to do with the stew. I don't know. But I do know that when you prepare lentils, you got to soak those for at least 24 to 48 hours.
You talking about in modern times. Imagine what they had to do back then without those same tools, utensils, and other elements that we have here to do so. They didn't even have running water half the time, right? So it takes a long time to do that. And if somebody's going to do all that work just to give it up to somebody, there's normally an exchange in that. You know what I'm saying?
And
now,
that would make perfect sense because I believe the word, and the word says over and over, Esau is Edom.
Correct.
It's the nation of the Edomites. But because I grew up in the Christian church, there's a lot of misunderstanding. I'm like unraveling. You know what I'm saying? Or misconceptions that I'm unraveling right now. And so I'm trying not to look at it through that scope. And by doing that, I'm saying that that's an inversion of the truth, possibly, that the churches are teaching. Do you see what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, I agree.
I'm definitely going to be emailing you about this and all that. But I just wanted you to know I appreciate you. And I will come back. I will be back on the chat. Don't worry. I'll be back.
Okay. Awesome. And bring anybody else you know who's also interested in this. Bring them this way as well. We can have a more conversations. I'm sure you have some other people who may have questions as well.
I don't. I'm alone in this journey, brother.
Oh, okay. Well, then we'll connect you with some good people so we can make sure that, you know, wherever direction you go in this journey, it's in the intended direction that the Creator has for you. But one thing that will probably be a bit unusual is people who identify as Israel, who share this truth. It's going to be a little bit more distinct than other paths that you may have looked at or followed in regards to it, because a lot of the information that we shared is finally in the hands of a group of people who have been disenfranchised as teachers of this information for a long period of time. And we are now taking back that birthright so that way we could be in an ample position to share and delegate this information and this knowledge to other people so they can understand, oh, you know what? This is why these people should have the word, because they're teaching it in an unadulterated fashion. And once people can respect that, now they can give some worth and some value to these people and now acknowledge what their role is in the larger scheme of things, right? So thank you for listening to that and taking that in. Get some rest. Appreciate
for the record, because I'm a musician and because I am not an ignorant musician, I know your people's influence on American music and music all over the world. I know that drums, I took a course on rhythm and blues, the jazz, everything, literally everything. There's a reason why, like the South and the music that came out during the civil rights movement, Joni Mitchell, Bob Dylan, Chuck Berry, they were all part of this huge movement that people don't realize. And it all started with music. So obviously I'm drawn to that for a reason. You know what I mean? So I've already known that stuff, but getting confirmations in scripture is a whole entire thing. But you have a great night. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. And I'll email you. I'm going to study this before I email you back, but I'll email you on the Jacob thing on a side note.
Okay.
All right.
So
have a good night.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Yo, why y'all trying to make me laugh and I'm trying to be serious? Yo, man, come on, man. Y'all be nice. The chat is sure turned up tonight. I see that, Solomon. Oh, man. All right. So let me do a quick summary and I'm going to close out. Thank y'all for hanging with us until 3 in the morning. I really wasn't planning on being here this long. But one thing that I like to demonstrate is that I try to be patient. I'm willing to teach even outside of my means and even outside of my capacity at the moment, meaning that I could be sick, I could be tired, I could be stressed. But when it comes to teaching, I always make room on my plate to do that, right? because I take what James says very seriously about teachers, and it's very important. A lot of people in our community probably will not have dialogue with Melissa, and rightfully so. You know, again, like I was trying to explain to her, the reason why there's a healthy mistrust when people, you know, feign being genuine to try and learn information from the community. She seems like she is genuine. She seems like she did acquiesce to a lot of the points that I shared with her, which is good. It's a start. You know what I'm saying? The key thing is more people of her persuasion needs to be aware of this information, how it's taught and shared and disseminated by our community, so they can understand why we make the claims that we claim, that we're not crazy people just on a street corner just yelling at you for no reason. There's a method to that madness, and there's a reasoning behind it, right? And I want them to see that a lot of us are reasonable enough to have a dialogue with you, to explain certain things to you. As long as you're sincere, as long as you have no ulterior motives, I don't know, right? I'm treating this as somebody who seems genuine, and I think she is. But also at the same time, I'm trying to balance it with giving you truth, and then at the same time giving you some tact and trying to find a middle ground in between, right? If you go and look at my audience, you'll see they're very outspoken, and I appreciate that. I wouldn't expect nothing less from them, right? They're going to be very outspoken, and they're going to speak their mind. And this is why I appreciate my audience, right? Love them, hate them, whatever. I appreciate them, right? However, I have to do my part in representing KHM, representing me, DivineProspect, and ultimately representing the Most High, that I have to be an ambassador for him to other nations. When we look in the scriptures, when Israelites was among other nations, they had ambassadors, they had representatives, right, that would deal with other nations. And this is what we have to have in this day. Yes, we have brothers and sisters that's on edge, ready to go to battle, cut you up and all of that. We need that. But at the same time, when it's not really wartime and it's time for diplomacy in regards to communicating what is the objective of us as a people in our community, we need people in diplomatic positions that can convey this, to say, okay, let me walk you through it. Let me explain to you why we say we're Israel. I'm gonna walk you through it. Why is Israel chosen? We're gonna walk you through it. Why do we see ourselves as the ones that Yah is using? I'm gonna walk you through it. I'm gonna walk you through each time. I'm gonna walk you through it. And there's layers upon layers upon layers of this information, but I'm gonna try to give you enough. And as you can see, she has a lot of questions about a lot of different things, not just the things she came in here for, and that's fine. I'm willing to teach on everything. I'll take you step by step through everything. And one thing that I did want her to see, and this is something that I deal with even our own people, is that yes, we're reading the scripture, but you got to remember the scripture does not tell us everything about the culture of those people, the history of those people, and even the language elements, right? Why does a person's name change? Why does it change? Is this something that's common in the ancient Near East, which is the background that the Bible was placed against? And if you understand that, then it gives you more insight into the text. When it comes to making a meal, how labor intensive is that? For somebody to say, give me some of that stew for you, or I'm going to die. And you have to bargain with them and say, okay, if I'm going to give you some food that I worked for, right, all day, I need something in return. Give me your birthright. Esau said, what is it to me? I don't care. I'm about to die. You can have it. Then it said Esau despised his birthright. Remember, this took place first, not under manipulation, but under a bargaining strategy that Jacob did. See, if I was to give you something in corporate America and explain to you a deal and show you how well this company bargained to get this, and this was a smaller company, this is a big company, but during that deal, they had some great bargaining strategies and they was able to get something out of the ordeal, you would say, oh, I applaud that small company. Yeah, that was a great bargaining strategy. But then I show it to you at a more granular level in the ancient Near East, and I show it to you through the story of Jacob and Esau. Now it's like, whoa, hold on. No, he manipulated him. He's this. Then I show you, well, the reason why Jacob got the name supplanter is not because that's what his name means. It's an attribute given to him by his brother. His brother added that to his name. That's where you get the term supplanter at. See, when people don't understand that, they automatically assume, oh, he's a supplanter, he's a deceiver. This is the perception of his brother. And that's weighed in regards to the semantical range that that term or that name Jacob contains. but it's, again, something that you got to actually study to see, right? And when I show you it means heals, because he held his brother's heel. Now, typically, you got to remember this, right? I'm going to show you something else. And again, somebody says, oh, it's not in the Bible. Okay, it's not in the Bible, right? But you got to understand how culture works. Or not even culture works. Let me discuss people who's had children. If you had twins, and I don't know if anybody has had twins. If you had twins and you still awake, with 250 people in here, somebody had twins or know somebody who's a twin, or you was a twin, put a 1 in the chat. How often do you see twins, where the first twin comes out, the second twin is holding on to his heel? You know what that means in the ancient Near East? I'm gonna tell you this. Watch it. I'm gonna blow your mind. Right? I know. Miss Melissa might say, "Well, you know that's not in the Bible," but I want to give her some insight. She's still listening. Whenever that happened in the ancient Near East, guess what? That means that the elder child that comes out does not have listen, watch this, an unchallenged claim to a birthright. You know why? Because the fact that his hand is on his heel, a part of the younger child came out first before the end part of the older son came out. Let me say that again. I'm getting a little deep, but let me walk y'all through this again. Follow me. Let me say it again. All right. Check it out. Right. Again, I get so deep in so many ways. Let's say this one more time. The fact that his hand was on his heel. Now, when we say his heel, we would say Achilles heel, right? That's from Achilles heel. Not literally, it says Achilles heel, right? The fact that he's holding on to his ankle, when we say his ankle, right? What happens is part of the younger son comes out before the full part of the older son comes out. So therefore, they come out together. Typically, when twins are born, one child comes out first, then the other child comes out. The fact that he was holding on to his heel goes to show that he came out as his brother was coming out, not separately. Hopefully somebody can follow me. So when everybody looks at this story and think there's some underlying things that you don't understand about the culture. And if they were kings, like princes being born from a queen and a king, that would be a whole issue right there. Because certain things will have to commence because one child came out along with the other child. Because, they also had conjoined twins at that time, all types of other stuff. But anyway, so now it's like, okay, I came out with my brother, not separate. So therefore, even though his head and everything came out first, part of me came out before the rest of him came out. So therefore, when it comes to birthright, Esau was the first child saw, but because Jacob came along with him, it's some underlying thing there that allowed that challenge to go through, that allowed the circumstance situation, because it was an underlying thing that they understood in the ancient Near East that we don't know today. And this is why I'm just sharing these are just little things I'm just sharing, right? And I'm sharing this so that way when people go back and look at the text, don't believe what I'm saying. Go back and research. If you want information on the ancient Near East and the cultural, I would say, perspective that they embodied, if you want to see their daily life routines, I have tons of resources to give that to you. Because one thing that we got to understand is that through archaeology, the material culture of the people of the Bible were left behind. That means all the stuff written about the people in the book, they left stuff behind. So we can see another part of their life. That's like me telling you about Shakespeare, and you read Shakespeare's work and say, oh, I only believe what Shakespeare writes about his work. But then that work he wrote about Othello, and I say to you, well, you know the reason why Shakespeare added this line in this passage is because of something that encountered in his life. Well, that's not written in there. Wait. But I know the history about the author. So if I know the history about him, I know he was exposed to, he's familiar with. I'm telling you, this is why it's showing up in Othello. This is why it's there. I'm trying to show you. Trying to show you. Did you see it? Okay, gotcha. Just say, right? But shout out to that sister for sticking with us, going through that. I thought that was an excellent show. Again, anybody's welcome on here to get this information. As long as you're sincere, we can build. If it's not, it'll just be a smoke session. I'm okay with that. However you want to slice it, I'm with it. There's more than one way to skin a cat. But if somebody comes on here and with a sense of genuineness, which I detected, I'm more than happy to disseminate whatever information I could. But again, a lot of people, we got to realize, is on milk. Most of the people in this chat, they've been here for a minute with us. They know how we get down. When I say bibliophile, they know I'm not playing with this. They know why the resources is there. Because unless you understand the culture, you will not understand that book. And I challenge that to anybody. Anybody out there, I will show you. If all you have is a linear theological perspective of the text, I'll mess it up with culture. Let's go. I'll put $500 on a line. I'll show you so many things in there that you won't even understand. And I say, oh, I'm gonna show you why you don't understand. You're going to try to find some abstract metaphysical thing to explain. I'm saying, no, it's not that serious. Let me show you what the culture did. And here's the evidence. Actually, it's in the book itself. Let me show you another verse. I'll show it to you. Because you remember she mentioned about that altar and him sleeping on a stone. Well, there's an explanation for all of that. It's not as strange. It's only strange to people who are 33,000 to 3,500 years or longer, 4,000 years, separated from that history, that culture, and the language of those people. If you don't understand their history, their culture, and their language, of course, you're going to find things in the text that don't make sense. And when you go into commentaries who don't reckon in culture, history, and language, and also look at other sister cultures and archaeology and everything else, a consensus on things, then of course you're going to be confused. Of course you're going to be unsure. And if you're growing up in religious institutions that's not teaching you the word like we teaching you, of course you're going to be displaced. And this is why I dare to say, I thank y'all for waking up people of color and putting it back into the hands of people who have been disenfranchised from the stock of Israel for hundreds and hundreds of years, that we are now taking our rightful place, coming back to teach this word, like Paul says in Romans chapter 3, the very I would say ambassadors to convey the oracles of Yah, that we are now giving it to you in a format that is unfamiliar to you, but it's the way that it should have been taught to you. And because you did not learn it in this way, shape, form, and fashion, now when you hear it, it becomes tough. It becomes a thick pill to swallow. And then now all these reservations raise up, all the defense mechanisms kick out, simply because this is not the way you was taught to exegete or perform midrash on the text. And of course, it's going to be something unusual, but if you work through it, the questions that I pose will be questions like, she admitted, I never thought about the name Edom before. Or you're right about this. Well, you know what? You got a good point about that. She said that more than the frustration she had, which I knew was based on her being tired. I could tell by her body language, eye contact, etc. And then the change in elevation in her tone that she was getting tired. And rightfully so. It is late, right? So again, I don't take nothing personal. It's fine. I understand that. But right before she went into that zone, she was eating it up. And all the thing I want to do is plant a seed, because whatever question she has, if I can answer it, especially as a lone wolf, where she is, I'm more than happy to give it to you. As long as you acknowledge that there is a case for quote unquote African Americans to claim ancestral ties to Israel, and that, boy, some of these African Americans can really teach this word. I wonder if that was by design or not. These are just questions that I just want to come up in their mind. And it's not to say we are better than anybody, but when he says that I'm going to raise you above all the other nations, it means he's going to give us a bigger responsibility to exhibit righteousness and be that walking Torah and the full, I would say, exemplary of Yeshua Bar Yosef's life, so that when people see us and they see how we carry ourselves, they will have no shadow of doubt to say that those are the people of Yah. I'm not going to mess with them no more like we used to mess with them. They got some dangerous people in there. And the only danger that they see is how we teach this word, how we stand on our square, how we look adversity in the face and speak the truth regardless of the persecution that comes our way. I'm done. Let me get off my soapbox. Thank you, Melissa, for joining. Look forward to you emailing, setting up a consultation. We could talk sidebar, side notes, give you some information on your history, which I've done studies on. Trust me, I've sacrificed a lot of my life to do research and study. So when I come across people who are not familiar with their own history, I'll give them, hey, look at this. Hey, look at that. Hey, read this. Go search that. Go ask this question, right? And I'll give it back. That's my duty as a teacher. It is not something that I praise. It's not something I wake up and say, yes, I'm so happy that I'm a teacher. No, I try to refrain from that. There's a lot of pressure, a lot of adversity, a lot of opposition I face just to deliver what I give to y'all today. And you know what? I never chose this position. I never asked for it. It was delegated to me. And you know what? Even though sometimes it is rough, I've accepted it. So despite my mental condition, physical condition, spiritual condition, when that platform's open and I'm called and asked to teach, Yah gives me the ruach in order to deliver. And even if a person at that time, it is based on how you convey the message. I saw the seeds going in. I saw the seeds going in. I saw the seeds going in. It's because the way I was planting it. I cannot be influenced by my peers on how to do the job that was given to me. They were given the job the way they were given it. They're spectating and watching this happen. But what I want to showcase to you that even though there may be people on the other side, right, of our ethnic boundaries that are looking, outsiders looking in, the best way to get them to see where we're coming from is based on your disposition, how you deal with them, how you handle them, right? That does not mean that you're getting in bed with them, you're making this great alliance with them. It's not, that's not what it's showing. It's showing is the decorum, the tact, and the diplomacy that Yah has given into you when you use wisdom. Wisdom. You assess who the person is you're talking to and find the best mode of delivery. Same thing when you play chess. You can't play chess the same way with everybody. You can't do that. Some of y'all don't play chess, so y'all don't understand. These are chess moves. Take this piece, move it here. You wait patiently. Take this piece, move it there. Wait patiently. Just see how the response is, how the kickback. You just wait patiently. Good chess games sometimes take hours, days. You got to start, stop, come back. But some people don't have the mental fortitude to do that. We have to be a light unto the nations. A light, not a shade. A light. So we must welcome them in so they can see this light, see these good works, so they can glorify him in heaven. That's how we have to act and how we have to move. And it's through that divine love that we have for Yah that we can move past our personal grievances, issues, dilemmas, etc., that we can speak to somebody outside of our community and really have a real formal and frank relationship of discussion with them. Because some people generally want to know and they want to align with us. They want to cleave to us and they want to be an ally to Israel. But the problem is what most of y'all are doing is you're creating all these walls and you're preventing a lot of these things to take place. So with that, I'm done. All right. Y'all are funny, man. All right. So I love y'all. Y'all know I love y'all, man. And y'all know I was reading your stuff while I was talking. I had to keep myself from laughing and just bugging out because y'all is hilarious, man. Y'all is hilarious, man. But I love the chat like I always do. Thank y'all for keeping it real, being transparent. I appreciate that. I'm gonna go back and read because some of the stuff y'all said I missed, but it's a genuine love that I have just in general. Like I have, if you have not given me a reason to hate you, why would I just come out and just hate you automatically? I can't do that. I don't know you to hate you. And like I told her, we have the receipts on the slaveholding families. We got that. She can give me the names. You can go, once I go through her history, if I see something, I'm like, oh, hold on. I'm going to let you know, Melissa. Hey, look, you have a great-great-grandfather who was a slaveholder, who contributed to the slave trade. Or if I go through it and I don't see it, how can I get mad at her? I'm like, yo, you did benefits from it. Neither did you have ancestors involved in it. How can I get mad at you for that? See, the problem is we think every white person contributed to slavery, benefited off of slavery. That's not true. Some white people didn't benefit of none of that, but because of their skin color, they have an advantage here in America, but that's not because their family benefited from slavery. Now, I'm keeping it real. Some of y'all might get mad at this. I'm just spitting facts. So when I talk to a person and I get to know them and I said, wait, let me trace you. That's why whenever I say to somebody like, hey, oh, let's go trace your roots, I want to make sure that I know, oh, shoot, did you know that your family benefited off of slavery? Did you know that? I'm going to tell you which specific peoples was subjected to that. When I go through I'm gonna show you these connections. They're gonna be like, oh, I didn't know. What should I do? What should you do? Okay. Well, you let us know whatever resources, access, information, whatever you have that you know could be beneficial to our community. It's a good way for you to cleave unto us and deliver. There's nothing that you have done personally, but if your ancestors have, the scriptures will say, unless you turn away from that. Once you get the knowledge of the truth, now you have to repent. You have to turn from that. Same thing. That's how it works. I didn't write the rules. We just live by it. But because we have the data today, I can do these connections and I can show. I'm going to say this last thing and I'm going to get off. There was this white guy that came to me. And again, we have Gentiles that cleave unto KHM. We got Gentiles in KHM. Yeah, they cleave unto KHM. They know who we are. They're here to align with, ally, support, etc. The same way that your Zionist Christians want to support the Israel over there. Oh, you got all of these infomercials at 3 o'clock in the morning. Oh, let's send money to Israel. Oh, let's pray for Israel. Those same people, white people who cleave unto KHM, they say, no, y'all the real Israel. I'm going to support y'all. I was already trained to do it for those Jews. I'm going to do it for y'all. You know what I say? Come on in. Nobody else in Israel wants y'all. Come on. Y'all come over here and support us. I have no problem with that. I have no issues with that. But I was talking to this white guy. I met this was like maybe 2 years ago, maybe 2020, like right before the pandemic, early 2020. And somebody referred him to me, just like the system. Somebody referred him to me, and I was talking with him, right? We was building and everything like that. He was like, oh, I don't really know if black people are Jews because they say A, B, and C. That's all right. So I walked them through it. I showed him the history and everything like that. He said, oh, okay, cool. So I asked him, I said, what's your ancestry? You want to share that with me? He said, yeah, because in my family, my family passed down, wealth. Like we have generational wealth. And I said, wow, that's fascinating. I don't have that, but it's nice to know that you have. They say, yeah, we have generational wealth, but black people automatically think it comes from slavery, and it didn't come from slavery because my ancestors told me A, B, and C. So answer, I guess he means like his great grandparents, whoever, whatever, right? I said, okay. So I said, man, if you don't mind, I would like to have a further conversation with you about ancestry. You'd like to go through. They said, yeah, that's all right. So we had a whole conversation. He shared with me names and dates and all this for his family. He actually had an ancestry.com account, and I went back and researched. I'm telling you, when I came back to him, I said, yo, let me show you something that's very interesting. Your family were Dutch, right? Yeah, Dutch. I said, okay. My family, my mother's side, they were from Tortola, St. John, and St. Thomas. So yeah, I said, did you know the Dutch conquered those areas and had slaves? And that region said, yeah. I said, you know what's interesting? You know what some of those names were, Febby names were for those Dutch? And he said, nah. And I told him. He's like, no, I don't believe that. I showed him all the documentation. His ancestors, Dutch, were responsible for delivering my ancestors to that part of America. What's the odds of me meeting somebody who has ancestry like that? The same person that said, oh, people think he's connected to slavery. My family was Dutch. Didn't even realize the Dutch was involved in the slave trade. That's crazy. And I showed him that. And I said, now that you see this information, what do you do now? What are you going to do all that inheritance and inheritable wealth that you got? What is the right thing to do according to scripture? What does Jesus say about paying somebody back for something? He's a Christian, by the way. Show him what the word says about restitution, even in the New Testament. He looked at me with a blank stare. And he's like, man, I don't even know what to do now. I said, you know what to do. I don't need to ask you for it. But when the Most High deal with you on this, and you did all of that ranting and raving, now we went down to the facts. You see, I ain't got to yell at you and scream at you. I just get to the facts. I ain't got to do all of that. I ain't got to do all of that. So to this day, this was 2 years ago. I've never heard back from him again. Never seen him active in the community arguing. Never doing nothing. That humbled him. He didn't realize that. I told him the exact slave ship. I gave him the name of the slave ship and everything. Humbled him. Slave voyages, I was there. Showed him the slave ship and everything. Like, oh, this is the slave ship. This is the family name. This how many slaves they were trafficking. Yeah, they were kidnapping. and trafficking people. These are the ships that they sent them on. These are the ports that they picked them up from, that they dropped them up for. These are the third parties that they use. This is where the money came from. Showed them all of that. It was a wrap. He was done. His whole soul left his body. You see that? There's, like I said, there's more than one way to skin a cat. So I take my time. I'm surgical. Do chess with them. Okay, I got you. Be patient. I understand. Let me walk you through it. And then after that, it's a wrap. That's it. So again, I appreciate y'all. I'm gonna leave because otherwise I'll just keep talking. We're 3 hours and 40 minutes in. Hopefully you enjoyed this show. I'm gonna give this a crazy title. Just so you know, Melissa, I'm gonna give it a crazy title so it can inspire people to watch the show and learn something and develop from it. So don't take nothing personal that was said by me, that was said in the chat, or that's the title of this show. It's just designed to draw traffic so more people can watch this dialogue and more people can get enlightened about the information that we're sharing on here. So much love to your family. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. We'll talk more in the future. Wow, that was an interesting journey tonight. And again, I am not feeling well. So I tried to hold all that in. And I appreciate y'all for your support, man. Thank y'all so much. And everybody that supported. Much love to y'all. Keep you in my prayers. Until we meet again, family, peace and shalom.